Hello and welcome to Definitely Not a Mimic, your D&D and TTRPG podcast. I'm Jacob Crowe,
I am Zill from the Twisted Pint Tavern.
And I'm Loot from the Loot Goblin Marketplace.
and today we are going to be working on a D&D tier list involving the classes in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, including the Artificer and Matt Mercer's Blood Hunter, since I guess we're going to just consider that official anyway, because it pretty much is. Even though it's not in any of the official books, it pops up in enough places to where we're just going to throw it in there.
Yeah, so we've got our tier list thing here, and then we also have a magic spinning wheel put together by Loot Goblin to randomly determine the order of the classes, so that we don't have any order bias.
Wheel.
Spin. We just want to jump in, just first spin.
Yeah, we'll get like
It's
Jeopardy
sweet.
music going.
Okay, all right, let's go.
Jackpot.
Check.
Hey,
Hey,
the Blood
you said
Hunter!
that. Okay, we're starting
Ding, 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 ding,
strong.
ding. Woo, yeah!
All right, well, Crow, you led the intro, so why don't you start the round table, and then we'll go Loot Goblin, then me.
Okay, Blood Hunter. I gotta reintroduce myself, because last time I played a Blood Hunter, I'm going to say, I was completely underwhelmed.
Yeah, I haven't actually even played a Blood Hunter, purely because when I look at it, I think, man, I can build a better Blood Hunter with a Sorcerer Fighter dual class.
Basically, yeah.
And it's not necessarily anything against the class or, Matt Mercer's take on it, because the Blood Hunter was built for a very specific thing when he initially did it. But like, to me, like I said, I can build something that's mechanically better and plays just the same out of Sorcerer.
It is probably
Fighter.
like more fun, yeah.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
But I will say, as of the release of the Order of the Lycan, when he went back through and they patched it up and generally made it a lot stronger, I will say it seems still not great, but better than, like, I would play it, even if it's not, I still think it's not that powerful.
I mean, I'll
Yeah.
play anything,
Yeah,
just for the hell of
so-
it.
Yeah, because of that, I would solidly place it in the B tier. I think it has a lot of interesting things. I like what they did when they fixed up some of the curses, because some of these curses used to be dog shit. And my only thing, though, is when it comes to stuff like Crimson Rite, I'm not a big fan of dealing damage to yourself for the bonus, especially considering that, yeah, the extra damage is really nice, but something that comes up a lot, especially if you're only running like base monster manual monsters, which you shouldn't, but in case you do, there are a lot of things, there are a lot of things that are resistant to, things like fire and necrotic damage types. And so most of the time you're only ever going to be using like cold or maybe lightning, most likely lightning, unless you run into, what is that, Shambling Mound. So yeah, yeah. So the main thing that it does for you, I guess, is making your weapon magical. I just wish that there was more variety in the base monster manual for you to be able to find vulnerabilities and stuff. Aside from that, though, Crimson Rite, it's fine now after all the other parts of the class got updated and brought up to speed when it came to its strength.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
It's still
a
B tier.
serviceable striker, but serviceable only in the sense that, like you said, you have to pick the ideal damage type. You have to do a lot more than a rogue, for example, to gain advantage for your damage. Like, it seems like it's a lot of work to be a very below average striker.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like also it's, and we're going to fall into this with some of the classes, I think, but it's a very situational, like, depends on your game thing. Because in some games, Blood Hunter is going to go really hard. It's going to fit thematically. It's going to kick ass in combat. But in the majority of games, it's not going to perform as well as, say, a fighter sorcerer dual class.
If we're talking strictly about just like damage numbers and things like that, I would put it down to fucking C tier. I think the thematics are the only reason why I would keep it in B, because I actually really like the theming of the character. Like, did you guys ever play The Witcher?
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I might
games
have
or
heard of
read the
it.
books
You know?
And it's basically a Witcher class.
or watch the
yeah.
very popular show on Netflix. Yeah.
Look,
Or
here's
used
I'm
to be
looking forward
popular.
to the
we
next
can
season for
get
sure.
we can get into that later podcast, but boy did they butcher my boy Cavill.
We can get into it if you want to.
Fuck it, it's the Witcher
Yeah.
class. Okay,
Yeah,
so
we can talk about
really
it here.
is.
Yeah.
okay, I'm a bit of a
It's the
Witcher
Witcher
nut.
class.
Okay, I'm a bit of a Witcher nut, and the first season wasn't the most accurate to the books because the thing is they're not basing it on the games, they're basing it on the works of Andrei Sapkowski, what I think is his name or something like that, and I say Witcher nut and I can't even properly pronounce the author's
Yeah,
name,
fake
but
fan. Fake fan.
still so I was watching the first season. They made changes. Every show makes changes, and I was like, okay, they left a lot out. They changed some things, but overall, it was I enjoyed watching it. And then season 2, I was actually kind of surprised because one of the first episodes in season 2, they go back and add one of my favorite stories from the initial, the Last Wish book, which is just this collection of short stories about Geralt, Yeske, and all that. So I was really pleased that they added that story into season 2, even though technically they made it take place after the events of the other stuff when it should have been mixed in, but whatever. But then they just didn't end it right. Like it didn't have the same punch that it did in the book. And so I was like, okay, well, I know that Henry Cavill's trying to keep things on track for keeping this story, the show in line with the story and the writing.
I like how you say that, even though Henry Cavill was technically not the person in charge. However, it's so true, though, that he had such a dominating force over this whole production that he might as well have.
He might as well have, and that was one of the big things. That was one of his big conditions, is that he would be Geralt. He wanted to be Geralt, but he didn't want to be in a show that wouldn't do justice to the original source material. And then by the end of season 2, it's like, man, they really took some liberties here, and then they just kept going. And then Henry Cavill either dropped or was dropped. They still, I don't think, have had an official statement on what happened there, but to my knowledge, he said, "Fuck it, I'm done," because they were ignoring him, they were ignoring the source material, and now they're replacing him with fucking Liam Hemsworth, which I'm not trying to dog on Liam Hemsworth at all, but you cannot go from Henry Cavill to Liam Hemsworth as the character. It's just that is not a transition that I don't think can be made.
Honestly, I'm inclined to agree, especially considering the amount of executive control that Henry Cavill had over the project. I mean, even fucking Roach was his horse. Like, that's Bro's actual horse.
Yeah,
that's kind of a crazy thing when I found that out.
He literally pulled a fucking Viggo Mortensen with Lord of the Rings on The Witcher, or at least tried, and they shut him down.
Which is tragic because, I think the show could succeed even if it was like a B- at best the whole time. Because you were saying, the first season, it wasn't that great, but you know what it was? It was fun. It was nice to have
fun.
Yeah, it was nice to have an adult fantasy show that was fun. There aren't a lot of that. Like, especially if it tackles things that are of a more adult nature, but it does so in a way where it can still be lighthearted. It kind of reminds me with things like Baldur's Gate, right? Because this always sneaks its way into the conversation.
This is just the Baldur's Gate podcast for real.
Yeah,
really is.
But but having your fantasy be able to be lighthearted at times. People do this thing all the time in their own TTRPG games. People do this. Fucking Critical Role is a prime example of that. No, they'll have moments where some really fucked up shit happens, and then they're making dick jokes not even 10 minutes later.
I mean,
or pretty much every Marvel movie follows this formula now, where they just do the D&D session humor after it's like, oh, this character's dying of cancer. It's like, okay, here's a punchline.
I think the difference is they're trying to be funny the whole time, whereas the other one's trying to lighten the mood.
Right.
It's like
true.
With the Marvel thing
versus commercial.
Yeah. With the Marvel shit, I feel like a lot of the times, not all the time, sometimes the shit does land, all right? Let's be honest. I think everybody in the theater was laughing when Captain America looked at his own ass and complimented it. You know what I mean?
It was a good play. It was a good play.
Yeah, it was good. It was good, all right? Fucking suck up your own pride. It was a good scene. That was funny. It's been known to happen. But yeah, I think that kind of stuff uh has been sorely lacking. I mean, Castlevania also did it really well. The Castlevania
Castlevania
show.
Definitely did
Castlevania did
well.
it really well. I was a big fan of the Castlevania
Yeah, people get like
animated show,
split
yeah.
into pieces and shit, and then there's like jokes. There's like someone gets kneed in a vampire gets kneed in the balls. Like,
It's
come on.
honestly the fucking bromance between
Yeah.
Alucard and uh, Belmont in Castlevania in the animated show is fucking
Mm.
mint. I love it so much. My favorite scene will always be something. What would they say? I hate you. Yes, fuck you very much. Like S tier moment in an animated show.
So, what I guess IP would you want to see that studio tackle next?
The
That
what
made
the Netflix.
Castlevania. Yeah,
I don't know. Netflix doesn't have the best track record right now.
that's true.
Mm.
Might quit when they're ahead.
Yeah, no, if they were to be able to tackle another IP in the same like quality that they did the Castlevania IP, I don't know. That's a tough one because they tried a Witcher animated show as well, and that was like it kind of flopped because of the Witcher drama as well.
Mm.
Yeah, everything was kind of slated for failure after that. Like, I know Blood Origins wasn't good, but I'm sure the drama didn't help it.
Yeah.
And
I
then you
think
really fed into it.
the drama didn't need to be there though for Blood Origins to tank, if I'm being honest. I watched Blood
Yeah,
Origins,
that's
it
true.
was bad.
Yeah,
But
it
anyway,
wasn't
to
good.
loop it back in, Castlevania, Geralt, you know what all this stuff has in common?
What is it,
Blood
Crow?
magic and Victorian vibes. Let's go,
Let's go.
baby. Well, maybe not the
So
Victorian vibe, but where
the
the
real
fuck?
question
Close
is,
enough.
are
Witcher
you
shit.
the real question is, are you a Bloodborne enjoyer? And then therefore that's your ranking for this class, I guess.
Yeah,
D for Bloodborne.
pretty much. Yeah. No, also it's important to say what we're kind of ranking these on, looping back around, because Crow, you mentioned mechanically and damage wise C tier, fun bumps it up one. So the three things that we're kind of rating these on is mechanics, and then role playability, and then overall fun factor of the class. So like Blood Hunter, you said mechanically probably is a C tier, but overall fun and how hard people go in the role play for it bumps up to a B for you.
Yeah, because I'd say the roleplay and all that is A. I like playing a broody Witcher style person. I've played several different Blood Hunters even before they gave it buffs and tried to improve it and made changes to make it more fun to play. And I will say, I had a lot of fun with it. I didn't have fun playing it in combat, but I had a lot of fun role playing yeah, exactly. The characters that I made with this class. And because of that, I would say that evens it out to that B tier.
I also say though, like just realistically, I don't know how high you can rank a class that is, again, we said fighter sorcerer good combo, but also like if you're to break down some of the core mechanics and inspirations for it, it's kind of like a paladin ranger combo, and I don't know that that's that's something that needs that gets a high ranking from me, just because you gotta have like your favored enemies of monstrosities and such to a degree, but
yeah, and then your brands, like the brand of castigation, stuff like that. That's kind of like putting a hunter's mark on someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you could even make the argument something like a cleric, for example. It has stuff it's really, really good against, like with turn undead, obviously, but still it's a very well rounded and very roleplay heavy class regardless, while Blood Hunter is it's one dimensional in the thing it does well, and it's bad in the things it doesn't.
So then I would agree with you at B tier, considering roleplay and fun, because when you do get into playing a Blood Hunter and it's in the right campaign, it's a ton of fun, even if you're nixing the combat and mechanical aspects. And then with the combat and mechanical aspect against certain things, it is great. But against the general, bulk of the monster manual, I do feel like it falls short mechanically.
You know where it was really good at? It was good in Curse of Strahd.
Yeah,
I played
that's
Curse
the
of
perfect
Strahd
game
with a
for it.
Blood Hunter, and that was actually like, I mean, I still think it at the time. I don't know if it's any different now, but like at the time, I still think it was on the weaker end. But it was still fun, like especially thematically. to play it in Curse of Strahd.
So I agree on B. Luke Goblin, do you agree on B?
Yeah, what do you
I
think?
definitely like the lowest of what we'll put in B. I'll say. I can live with that. I just there's so many striker classes like in from 3.5 and past editions I liked more, like the Duskblade and stuff that had like similar-ish aesthetics. But
That,
yeah,
Well,
I can say low B.
that's true.
ooh, low B. Damn. Okay.
Low B.
Yeah,
I am
Okay.
inclined to agree just because, again, if you are considering how, other builds and other ways to get there, you can play a Blood Hunter aesthetic once again with a fighter sorcerer dual class and be mechanically better. So I think we're not rating dual classes, multi classes. I mean, that
Yeah.
seems like a good podcast episode for later, but
you're like a dip maybe
yeah.
versus hybrid.
But I
My
think
only issue is convincing players to be able to find that theme. Because like
within that,
yeah, within that multi-class, because like once you start multi-classing, themes get muddled. And I think I've yet to find anybody, and you could say if like let me know if there's anybody who's ever played at your table. I've yet to have a single player that wanted to multi-class that had a vision that I would say is a clear vision of what their character's actual theme was beyond this is cool to have this much damage or whatever. I don't consider that theme. Like I don't consider that to be like, oh, you really thought about your character. I just feel like you just looked at a spreadsheet and you saw it did a lot of damage. And yeah.
well, so
I don't
I
think most players are going to find that theme without a class to be able to help guide them with that. So in that respect, I do think the Blood Hunter is effective at doing that. It does get the point across of like what a
while being
Witcher
a
kind of
single
character would
class.
do. Yeah, while being a single class.
I do have like my players at in the bulk of my games, my brother, a couple friends, and one of the characters that I play, we do multi-class, and we try to keep it within a theme, within a logical thing for that. But you do have a point where typically it's not that you multi-class and it brings you out of your theme. It's that usually you're not multi-classing to build your theme. You're multi-classing to improve the gameplay of your character, and then you try to find a way to make your theme make sense with that.
Yeah,
Right.
most of the
It's
time,
really reverse engineered.
yeah. Most of the time when I see a player, because I have seen people build off their theme with a multi-class, usually it's, I'll be honest, completely unoptimized. Like
Yeah, it's
something that,
detrimental.
yeah, it's something that's detrimental, but personally to me, I would be willing to like give them a little bit extra, like when it comes to magic items or
Yeah,
whatever, to
something that
accommodate for
ties
that.
it in. You have
Yeah,
someone who is fucking they're a pure fighter kind of thing, or
yeah.
they're maybe someone who's a sorcerer and they
This
are
great
trying to dip
axe,
into fighter for this blood hunter aesthetic, and you're like,
yeah.
well, here's a weapon that uses your charisma mod. Have fun.
Exactly. This great axe allows you to use your channel divinity and your cast your smite spells, It's like, oh, that's weird to
Yeah,
have the
yeah.
while you're raging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Well, we have blood hunter. Now let's spin the wheel again, and Luke Goblin, you're up next for first talk.
Yeah, let's see what we got here.
Ooh, almost rogue, but barbarian.
Speaking of barbarian,
The Giga Chad of D&D.
The Giga Chat of D&D. All right, let's have it.
Honestly, Barbarian's got a lot of cool things going for it. Especially with the subclasses with 5th edition, you can almost have like kind of a taunting tank like option that really wasn't something that they had before, which definitely bumps it up in my mind. I almost want to land it on an A because it's a very flavorful martial in a lot of ways, and I feel like it has like fair weaknesses built in. That like it has like clearly defined strengths and weaknesses. I guess is what I'm trying to say. What do you guys
I
think?
I do agree. I think barbarian is one of the classes that they took the simple concept of I hit hard and made it so much, like gave it so much more potential than that. I mean, one of my buddies is playing a grapple barbarian, so it's a dual class for the theme. We were just talking about that, but it is mostly barbarian, and you can run that
a
well.
barbarian.
Barbarian, yeah, and I've seen people, do like only throwing, only improvised weapons with barbarian, and they build it up, and it's like not at all what a barbarian was meant to be, but works great. If you want to play the typical drunkard tavern brawler, barbarian's one of the best picks for that.
And you think it would be monk, but just the way barbarian like gives advantage to certain checks, like it just
and raging
allows,
kind of ties into the aesthetic of that drunken rage and all that. So, and that's just one build for barbarian. I mean, mechanically, I think barbarian is up there. There are some gripes that people have with certain things. You know, can't cast spells while raging, things like that. But
I think that's
ultimately,
fine, honestly.
yeah, I think it's fine.
makes
and
sense.
Get over it, loser. Fucking hop out of your rage then.
exactly. Yeah, no, I'm
God
I think
forbid
it's
you have
fine.
fucking limitations, you know?
and it hits hard, so it does well in combat. Fun factor, I think barbarian is one of the most fun classes to play in combat.
It is super fun. I would go so far as to say barbarian, for me personally, S tier. It's stupid
Ooh.
fun. You have a lot of health. All of my favorite characters all my favorite parties. I always remember having at least one barbarian. Like the barbarian
That's
character is
fair.
like the most memorable one.
They
You know?
always
Well, and
are part of
out
a
of-
glory story of some kind.
Yeah,
well,
even
and
if they
out
get
of
killed.
out of combat, they're still great because, you know, a fighter out of combat, you have to really come up with what's fun about them, right? What makes them unique in dialogue and all that. Whereas a barbarian, even if you go with the cliche of he's a savage with a 5 intelligence, that's still fun to play outside
I mean,
of
we've all
combat.
done like intelligence dumps for Fallout, for example.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
there is
yeah.
a fun to it.
I was thinking A tier, but I gotta be honest, if we're saying how much variation it has in the role play, we're saying it's a lot of fun, and mechanically it is upper A or S tier. I might agree that it's an S tier.
I could see bumping up to S tier just because it probably is the best martial at like playing into different flavors of
And
like just different
especially considering no multi-class. Like if we're not talking multi-class steps here. We're talking straight assume you go soul all the way through in your class, in this class. But
I could live
fighter,
with an S for sure.
yeah, barbarian gives you the most opportunity for flavor with that and the most routes you can take, I feel like, for a martial.
Yeah. And you get to play as the Giga Chad. Or the Giga Chad S, you know? Or the Giga Chad MB.
I mean, who else can look at a power word kill and not be able to read it so he doesn't die? Absolutely.
Exactly.
I can't read power word kill, doesn't work. And then you still die. But it was badass though.
But it was badass. So we're saying barbarian is S tier then.
Yes.
All right. That was a very tentative yes, but S for strong.
S for strong. Yeah, S for flex.
Flex. S for I don't know. I can't read that.
S for intelligence is 5.
All right, looks like you're up next.
Yeah.
Let's see what we land on.
Ooh.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I was gonna have to start with Ranger.
You're gonna be spared the
I
already
hot takes. Had a hot take on Ranger last time it came up. So, all right. Fuck. What was it? I clicked remove and I wasn't paying attention.
Artificer.
Thank you, Artificer. So I think Artificer really depends on the player and the DM, not so much the game you're in, but like DMs who are very, very by the rules, by the book. An Artificer player is not going to have as much fun with that because to me, a large part of the Artificer class is just fuck the rules. They're just guidelines. Have fun with it. And that obviously isn't like all there is to it. But when you're making magic items and trying to tinker your way through a scenario, if you have a DM who's just going to say, no, the book doesn't say you can do this, so you can't, then that player is not going to have fun with it.
Yeah, some people really hate like almost they feel like it plays too much into steampunk and not enough into like fantasy. So like they'll very restrict the role of the Artificer.
And on the other side of it, if you don't have a creative player, like someone who's not thinking outside the box, then Artificer is going to be very bland. Yeah, but they're going to have one thing that they do instead of being the let me tinker the way out of the situation. Like if you have an Artificer player who's watched MacGyver, they're going to be the most fun Artificer you'll have in your entire game. Whereas people who only want to play specifically by by this one concept with Artificer, it can still be a lot of fun, but it does limit your role play ability.
So where would you place that then? I guess
I think
with all that
assuming you
considered.
have the right DM and the right player, I think Artificer could be up into A tier for the fun and the role play. Now, mechanically speaking, they are the wonkiest of the classes.
And partially because it's poorly like established, even like
Yeah,
rules as written for sure.
it's not a bad class mechanically, but it's a weird class mechanically. The
I
the way
think,
you get spells
yeah.
is kind of weird. The abilities you get, combat, like you're not a combat character at all, but then certain infusions you take make you a combat character, yet you're still not the best in combat. I think mechanically it's like a B or maybe even C depending on the game. But roleplay and fun, it's definitely an A tier. So I think I kind of settle on it in B.
Hmm. I'm inclined to agree, though the aesthetic for me when it comes to like the steampunk building shit kind of hits me in like low A tier, not low A tier, low like S tier spot when it comes to the aesthetic because I love that shit.
Yeah, no,
Like
it's great, and if you have a
mm,
game that accommodates that, then that's fantastic. But like Luke was saying, some
mm.
DMs are like, "Nah, you can't. There's no steam-powered engines in my D&D game. You can't have guns." And I'll be honest, I'm one
Mhm.
of the you can't have guns DMs in a lot of my games. If I
Arcane firearms then. No guns in your D&D. That's not
no,
even
no,
D&D.
no. That's not what I said. In some of the games, I have my pirate
Oh, okay.
game where there's cannons, there's flintlocks. I
Mm,
started a Humblewood game where someone is playing a old fox artificer with a magic gun, and it's like
that's
if we're
cute.
just having fun, I don't I don't care. But if we're trying to go it was mainly in older editions. 5e does a good job at making guns not fun. We almost always homebrew guns in 5th edition games because by the rules they're just you might as well use a
They just have a
crossbow.
lot of damage and not much else, and it's kind of
And the
boring.
damage
Yeah.
isn't even there as much. Like to me, if you want to fix guns for 5e, use exploding dice. That's how you make them fun. Take
Yeah.
the
Exploding dice.
if it's a d12 for the damage, just for example, okay, split it into 2d6 and make it exploding dice. 2d6 means it's going to explode more often, and the player is going to have a lot of fun when they roll a 6 and get to roll again,
Mm.
and that fixes guns.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a fun way to do
Also
it.
having different kinds of guns that have different like mechanical
Yeah.
uses, things like that could be
Flintlocks,
really interesting.
arquebuses,
Yeah.
muskets, things like that.
Have a weird one like what are those ones? The like harmonica guns and things like that, so you can have like 4 shots.
Yeah.
Yeah, do weird
Um,
things. Make
the
them interesting.
the duck foots where it just splits.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, and the main reason, like I said, in older editions, which is I got my start playing with my dad's old second edition books, kind of thing. Um, we always said no guns because guns meant gunpowder, and gunpowder meant breaking everything. And in 5th
Mm,
edition, it's a lot easier to respectfully say no as the DM when it comes to bomb shenanigans and all that, because things like resistances and such are built in. And
mm,
like in my pirate game, I balance it out by the fact that gunpowder is one of the most expensive things out there. So if you want to use guns and cannons, you spend a bit of money and you have enough to use that. But if you're trying to blow up a powder keg, that's hundreds of gold gone for that powder keg. And are you going to do that every encounter? No, you're not.
Yeah, you have to
So,
make sure the
also,
heist is worth it.
yeah,
yeah, also considering that because I mean ammunition it's generally expensive, especially even during those days. Like ammunition shouldn't be easy to come by,
yeah,
and especially like black powder and things like that. And also, if you got to, I mean, just make it obey rules like how you would. If you just throw a powder keg out in the fucking water and it sinks down or whatever, it won't explode if you shoot it with a gun. It's in the fucking water. The
yeah,
powder is like
exactly.
inert now. Like, what are you doing, you idiot? Why'd you do that?
Idiot.
Like, you know?
Yeah, one thing in the defense of like being a little more lenient for alchemists, I
Mm,
guess, or artificers, and like I guess the subclass alchemists. A lot of the time, like I feel like the reagents always get very scrutinized for artificer, but for like other classes, like especially caster classes, they do
mm.
kind of get ignored. So it's kind of funny that
Except for
alchemists also gets
diamonds.
held to a higher, except for diamonds for like resurrections and stuff for
Mhm.
Yeah.
sure. So it's like one of those things where it's like you got to be as fair to the alchemist as you are to the random casters as
Yeah,
well, at least for like low level reagents. Or if you want to be completely, across the board realistic, I think it is one of the ways you're supposed to balance casters.
Mm.
So it's kind of fair to have that standard to everyone. So it is funny when DMs will only crack down on the alchemist, but let
Oh
like the
yeah, but let
casters do
everything else
whatever they
I
slide.
think it's
want.
kind of fascinating. Like you guys have both brought this up. I've actually never ran into this problem before when I played an Artificer of like a DM being like hyper scrutinized over like this class in particular when it comes to their reagents and stuff like that. Does that happen often in other games you play, like even without like your typical party, like when you play with other groups and whatnot? That kind of
So
scrutiny.
with Artificer in particular, no, I
Mm,
haven't seen it, but I've played with DMs. And, we have an old family friend.
mm.
If you're watching this, I don't dislike your games at all, but I'm just using this as an example.
We're
He's
going to beat you with a
very
hammer.
he's very mechanically minded with the stuff, and if you try and use a spell in any way that isn't specifically listed by the spell, the answer is typically a no. For example, in second edition, the description for Featherfall is you touch a creature and they assume the mass of a piece of down. And then they fall at the rate of that because of that. So I wanted to cast Featherfall on somebody to give them the mass of a piece of down so I could shove them away. By the description and by the fun factor, it should have worked. And he said no. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you don't think that should have worked, that's fine. But if you're going to say no to that, but if that's in the spell description and it by the words should work like that, and you're going to say no, you're probably also going to have a harder time accepting some of the things that an Artificer player is going to try to pull off.
Mm.
So that's
Especially
kind
if
of
we're
what I
talking like
mean.
weird tech, right? Because like
Exactly.
there's going to be a lot of things to where like we were just talking about the example of like I don't know throwing a powder keg into the water or something, right? Normally a firearm like a bullet would if you fired that through a powder keg that's not actually going to ignite it. But what
It
could
wouldn't do
ignite
jack
it
shit.
is if you maybe had it, your bullets can ignite. This is something you could probably be able to do and then you
Or
shot that
in
in there and that would blow it up.
in my pirate game, again, if you want to use a gunpowder keg as a bomb, go for it. I let it happen. You can throw it out and then shoot it and it'll explode. And I have a reason for it with the way that powder works in my world. It's going to be expensive as hell. But the reason why powder is so expensive is because it's not just made within the core mechanics of what goes into gunpowder IRL. There are, so in my world, there's a certain type of ruby that is highly like explosive. It's highly volatile. And so gunpowder has processed shards of this ruby in it. So that's why it's kind of like don't jostle it kind of thing. So if someone wanted to throw a powder keg out and then shoot it and have it explode, then yeah, you either your bullet nicks one of these shards of the pieces of ruby, the chunks of ruby that's in this keg, and that causes it to explode. So in that instance, it works and I have a reason for it. But again, because of that reason, gunpowder is really fucking expensive. So yeah, but again, like you said, pure physics wise, with plain gunpowder, shooting the barrel is not 99% of the time going to have it explode. You have to have a very specific case. It's like shooting the gas tank on a car doesn't cause it to explode.
What are you talking about? It works in GTA.
True. It
Yeah,
works in the
That
movies
means
too.
it works in the movies
It
too.
works in the movies.
I'll be real though, when it comes to that kind of thing, I do land more like with what you're saying, to where if it would happen in the movie, it's badass. I'm gonna let it happen most of the time.
Yeah, because it's fantasy. You're trying to have fun
Yeah,
with it.
Yeah, I think maybe the problem, like kind of going back to what you're saying, where I've experienced it, people kind of
Mm,
pretend that they understand the artificer more because it uses more real world logic, physics, stuff like that.
Yeah,
People really
tinkering
don't
is
understand why things are used for magic components usually. So it's kind of like almost like the pseudoscience argument where like when you start arguing movement and physics in game for D&D with real life math, you've
yeah,
missed
it
the plot
doesn't add
entirely.
up.
I think that's probably the part of the problem, right? Is this attempt to like they'll look at the artificer and want to make the immediate comparison to, not just the technology. Well, I mean, not just the magic of it, but mostly the technology aspect. But remember, the fucking first feat is called magical tinkering. This doesn't
Right.
necessarily
Yeah,
have
it's
to.
magic.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't
This
use real
doesn't
life
have
rules.
exactly. And I think this is where people go wrong, because like it's like magical technology. It is using magic to make a sort of technology. So it doesn't have to follow those rules. It can still follow the rules that you're already going with when it comes to magic and all the things that you're already ruling with that. So treat it like that first. And I think this would help a lot of DMs who are having issues running an Artificer to be able to clear that through in their heads. Like, think of it more like if a wizard had more options to be able to really fuck with his spells and like put those into objects and other things like that. You know, if a DM thinks of it more like that, but yeah, the guy has like a steampunk aesthetic and has a fucking robot arm. You know,
Yeah.
like
So you know what I'm
pretty
hearing?
much.
What I'm hearing
Mm.
is it's actually S tier because it's 40k mechanics, logics for orcs.
I mean,
Okay.
honestly, yeah, sure.
Fact, the orcs are definitely artificers. They're
I'm
like
not going to
Kuatoa
disagree with that.
artificers. They're Kuatoa artificers.
That is the logic of like it's just magic, it just works.
It just works. They tinker something, so it's an artificer, and then they believe it works, so it works. So they're
That's the
Kuatoa.
magic,
So
yeah.
every orc in 40k
Yeah,
is a Kuatoa
replace belief with like alchemy, and then
Yeah, just a
basically
smidge of pseudo magic.
Yeah. So
complete pseudoscience shit, right? Like
there is something else to
the four
just
humors.
mechanically with the artificer that I do feel like we've neglected. They are the only class in the entire game that can build a nuke at level 2.
Ah, true. S tier again because
Yeah,
they're
I mean-
orcs that can build nukes.
Well, they can magically tinker 2 bags of holding and then pop them in. I think that's
True.
second level, or it's pretty close to
wait.
second level.
Let me double check. I gotta check now. I gotta fact check you.
Yeah, I don't know at what level they can
Jamie,
make the
pull that
bag of
up.
holding, but obviously we know the interaction.
We know the interaction. So yeah, I think personally they're probably a B tier just because there is a lot of it's up to the DM on the mechanics and how the class is actually going to play out. So if you have a great DM and a great player, they're A or S tier. But
you know, as much as I was memeing, I kind of agree. It's the same restrictions and like caveats we put for the Blood Hunter. Why it ended up B.
It just depends on the game, on the DM, on the player. If you have a great lineup, it's great. Yeah. If you don't have the greatest lineup with those three things,
level 2.
Yeah, level 2. Yep, level 2 nuke. So you know what? Because of level 2 nuke, I think I'm gonna say A tier. I think mechanically that does bump it up to A tier.
A for Artificer. I'm with you.
A for Artificer to be more in line with the roleplay fun of it too. Agreed.
Also, Rope of Climbing and Sending Stones. Infusing those, I swear, being able to make those, especially if you're doing one-shots and stuff, having Sending Stones is so goated.
It's game changing, dude. In my old games, we always had before Sending Stones were a thing in D&D, we had amulets of communication, and they were just, if you had basically this amulet, it had a little mirror in it, like a little vanity mirror. You could pop it open and then speak somebody's name, and if they had a mirror near them, then you could talk to them through the mirror. And so it just became this thing where people would have these amulets of communication on them because it was a mirror. Then you could literally just call up a friend. It was like Sending Stones, and we had those already, and then they came into D&D, and it's a thing that artificers can just make in 5e, and it really is great. However, we always remove the limitation of you can only cast sending once per day. We just have to be an open radio.
I do like that idea of the funny thing is, I would probably even say, like, if you were to continue wanting to do that same kind of mirror thing, I would probably say that you could make your Sending Stones be like that. There's kind of this thing here when it comes to the replicating magic items and stuff that lends you to be able to create magic items that would be homebrewed. And so, yeah, like
give them the mechanics of something that functions.
I would, as a DM, offer an Artificer blueprints to be able to make an infusion for like a weird magic item that's only going to appear in this campaign.
Yeah,
I think that could be a really cool thing to do.
If they have the infusion to make a bag of holding, but they want to make a bottomless flask, why not? It's similar enough magic, and they're limiting themselves to a flask instead of a full ass bag of holding. They can have fun with it. Let them do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
Definitely.
So I think A is fair.
All right, A tier for Artificer.
A tier it is.
All right, Crow, back to you with.
Let's do it. Fighter.
Bard.
Bard.
Boy,
Oh, Bard. Oh, Bard. Oh, you.
Oh, you.
Bard.
It keeps the D&D meme
I'm gonna
Reddit
get
alive.
everybody to hate me.
If it is alive, it might be dead by now. I think they moved from it. But
From what?
I was saying Bard single-handedly keeps the D&D Reddit alive. Just really
Oh,
D&D
yeah.
memes in
fair,
general.
fair.
And I'm gonna make all of them pissed off at this podcast right now. You want to hear it?
Go for it.
I don't get them.
You don't get bards.
I don't get it.
It's fair because the
just don't.
D&D movie didn't get them either.
I just don't get it. Every time I try to imagine this, no. Let me finish. I have the floor.
Crow has a talking stick.
Yeah, I got the talking stick. I made the sending stones. You know, I will beam my loathing for bards. Let's start with this. Let me start with a feature that even bards hate. Counter charm is dog shit. And now from there, yeah, and from there I'm gonna work my way over. Okay. What even is bard? I think I like the idea of like a scald or something like that. I think that's kind of interesting. I think in that kind of vein, a bard makes sense. Okay, it's like stories, like that's kind of cool. But you know what most people do with bards? They just like kind of sing. And it's kind of an excuse for someone to be quirky. And here's the thing.
It's something you put in your Twitter bio.
It's something you put in your Twitter bio. I'm okay with that. I used to not be, to be completely honest. I used to find it very cringe. But now my main thing is, I think it's completely fine for a quirked up white girl to want to play a bard. I think that's completely fine, based even. And I hope they have a lot of fun with it. But I just can't. Based in Bard Pilled. So I will give them that. You're allowed to make a bard, and Crow's Perch, Jacob Crowe from Crow Perk, will endorse it even. I will be a bard ally even as I say this. However, I can't personally imagine a bard character. I've tried several times. I always end up switching the class to something else that I feel like makes more sense. I have tried a spy. I've tried oh my god. Either ends up turning into a rogue, or they turn into one of them turned into a blood hunter, funnily enough, that we just mentioned before.
Or just any full caster,
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Sorcerer.
And one of them turned into a cleric. Just because, like, all of these other things. Oh, wait. One of them turned into a warlock, too. There was one that was a painter, and he turned into a warlock. I just went with the warlock thing instead because I did some Dorian Gray shit.
Yeah, it's way better.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, right? I tried to do characters that focused on the arts, and I played the class that's focusing on the arts, and I just don't get it. It didn't hit me. And that's where I'm at with bards.
They're a background and a skill check.
I think bards. So my brother plays a bard in my.
Also, why are they full casters? I don't understand that.
Yeah, that I don't understand.
Because people complain that they're too weak, I guess, in 3.5 or whatever.
Yeah. So he plays a bard and he pulls it off well because he's the story master. He's a pirate and he's a brewing.
He's a pirate rising as swashbuckler with a see
because
with a different background, huh?
Because of the way that he plays bard, he could totally play it as something else. That is something I will give you. I'll agree with you on is then like 95% of bards could simply be any other class with a instrument proficiency and perform better mechanically. I will agree with that. The thing that bard has over everything else is it is S tier to me for role play and fun. You can have, again, yes, it's an excuse to be quirky for some people, but you can have a lot of fun.
I am okay with the quirk. I'm fine with quirky now. I didn't used to be. But I'm fine with quirky. You know, you're allowed to be quirky.
And also, here's the thing. I mean, if you think about it logistically, all of us D&D YouTubers, we're all bards. We're all entertainers. We share stories. We make songs.
You're hitting me with the you're trying to hit me with the relatable card now, huh?
Yeah. I want in D tier. Or cringe.
You're like, I fucking hate my channel.
Like you're telling me that all bards have this trash can of a YouTube channel, dog? Fuck it, D tier.
Other influencers, that's awful. Dude.
Oh god. Okay, yeah.
All right, that
backfired on me. That backfired on me.
Luke Goblin has announced the F tier that we are now putting bards in.
Influencer.
I tier for influencer. All right, so back to it. I think bards are A or S tier for the roleplay and the fun. Mechanically, I mean, there are a lot of things that could be better. Bardic Inspiration is useful, but you don't get enough use of it for the number of class features that end up using your Bardic Inspiration. And by the time you get to the level where you get your Bardic Inspiration back on a short rest, it's like most people have probably multi-class by then because they got sick of it.
I forgot that they didn't get it on short rest.
I kind of wish
assumed that they did.
I kind of wish bards were like the spell thieves, full casters. Like they could take other people, like just copy other people's talents.
Did you see D&D 1 bard? I think they're doing more of that kind of stuff.
D&D 1 bard did have some cool things. Like your Bardic Inspiration can be used as a reaction. That was a huge change.
Yeah, that's big.
But once again, that's all mechanical. I still, at the heart, I still can't imagine a bard character whenever I make one. It always ends up turning into somebody else. But go on ahead.
I think roleplay and fun, they're definitely in the A tier or S tier because of how far you can go with it. Despite Crowe not being able to think of a bard character, there are a lot of people who have a lot of fun with their bard concepts. But mechanically, there is a lot left to be desired, and I don't think I've played with anyone who has stuck with Bard to level 20. I mean, not even just level 20. Like in a game that when the game ends, they're a Bard all the way to that level at the game ended. I don't think I've ever played a game with someone who did that. So
my favorite character that had a Bard dip was like a 3.5 character that was like a dirge singer basically, and I really only picked it because of the feats. And really, it was just a cleric.
In second edition, the bards were actually a lot of fun because they were literally like a tri-class split in one. They were supposed to be a hybrid of a fighter, a mage, and a thief. So they got some thief talents, they got some thief skills. They had proficiency with weapons because of like street performances and such. And they had some casting to enhance some of that stuff. So older editions, I feel like, did Bard better than 5th edition does because they nailed it more on the head. Like in 2nd edition, they introduced the Blade Singer Bard, and that is a really cool concept that simply isn't in 5e. I think Blade Singers actually isn't a wizard thing now.
Yeah, there's a Blade Singer class that was in Skag, but when it comes to Skag, all that stuff's kind of up in the air as to whether or not like people are gonna still allow you to play it.
Well, and like I had a concept that I really want to play someday.
Put it in another book.
I have a concept that I want to play that is a pyromancer, kind of like a street performer who does all the fire tricks, like fire spinning and all that. And I was like, that's totally a bard. He's a street performer. He's a bard. And then I was looking at how to make it work, and it's like, no, he's a sorcerer. Like I can't. I would love to make him a bard, but he's a fucking sorcerer. I can't make this in bard. So I feel like older editions maybe nailed bard better than 5th edition did. And
what I'm hearing is you're talking yourself slowly into my position.
I'm hearing bards washed up.
I am talking myself into that. I still think roleplay.
I didn't even need to debate you. You just came crawling. Where did you end up? Back to me.
Yeah. I think roleplay and fun factor, they're definitely up there, but mechanically, I mean, you can flavor any other class to be a bard and use a proficiency to take an instrument and achieve mechanically a better thing than bard in most cases.
Yeah, and you can always be a party face with other classes, and sometimes they use party face, like
sorcerer, charisma base.
Better. Yeah,
fucking a thief who just has a good charisma and is your
paladin that just not a stick in the mud.
All right. When we get to paladins, I do need to talk about that because I dislike this idea that every paladin should play like this like the most hardliner. The fucking hall monitor, the fun police.
Lawful good versus lawful stupid.
I've had a lot of like my older brother loves to play paladins, and I also kill them a lot. But that's not my fault. That's just it is partially my fault. But I'll get into that when we get to paladins. Paladins, you can play cool paladins. Everybody who's watching right now, you could play a paladin that's interesting. But we'll get there.
Bard, I would put C personally. I don't know what you guys had.
I think I've talked myself down to Crowe's position and putting it at C.
C for Crowe.
C for Crowe's correct.
All right,
let's fucking go.
We'll put it in C. I still think it's up here roleplay and fun wise, but realistically, build wise, it's probably down here.
Tell you what.
Alex, don't hate me.
I'll give you this. Here's my little tribute to you. since you've talked yourself into my position, I am now I will allow you to place Bard in B,
You
just so your heart could be able to take it.
do me a great honor, Crow.
B for Bard.
I'm putting it above Blood Hunter though.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay. And now we are back to Luke Goblin. What's it gonna be?
Hopefully Paladin, just because we've talked about it so much.
Nope,
Ooh,
you get
nope.
a wizard.
We
And
get wizard, the
I'm gonna-
nerd class.
I'm gonna run real quick while you guys start talking wizard.
So Luke
I'll be
Goblin,
able
what
to
do you
listen.
like
I'm
about
just muted.
wizards?
I feel like obviously like fantasy does a really good job of building the aesthetic of a wizard. I don't know if it's really captured in 5e in the sense that like you have a few things that make your spell book slightly bigger, but really like where's the mastery of the arts that the sorcerer doesn't also have, I guess.
What do
I feel
you
like
mean
it's
exactly?
missing something. I feel like there's meta magic feats, and I really wish they like completely were able to supercharge their stuff in a way that like other full casters can't. I feel like they should be like the end all be all of like high risk, high reward, because they are the glass cannon. But I feel like I just don't see it, if that makes sense.
For me, when it comes to mechanics, I've typically only played evocation and abjuration wizards. I will say when it comes to, because like I never played glass cannon wizards. Like I liked getting con whenever I played an evocation wizard, and abjuration. Anybody who's played an abjuration wizard is famously way more tanky than they appear.
It's because
No, that's
Abjuration
true.
is I wanted to be a tank, but everyone else was playing tanks class or
Oh,
subclass.
not even that. I want to be the tank, and I want to make the tank like I want to be a better tank than the tank, and also have wall of fire and fireball.
So
You know?
here's my thing with wizard. I feel like wizard itself is cool, being that like flavor wise, it's bland on
It's
its
iconic.
own, but it's iconic, and you can do so much with it. So it's really a what do you want to make of it class. Subclass wise, it sucks dick. Purely because more than half of the subclasses are throwaways.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
that's
would
kind of
love
where I
evocation,
think, too.
abjuration, but divination's dog shit. Like, I mean,
Divination gives you important dice. In Baldur's Gate, Divination's
Mm.
one of the best, but this isn't, Baldur's Gate podcast.
Yeah.
But
What does illusion do? I forget.
Illusion gives you fuck.
I could have mixed the two up. Yeah, 1 second. Jamie, pull this shit up.
But yeah, I think,
don't quote me on the wait on the
Yeah.
well, not the other one. On my opinion on divination, I may mix it up with illusion.
Yeah, I think and some of the subclasses for wizard are great, but I feel like I agree with Loot where wizards somehow don't feel like the masters of the arcane arts that they're supposed to be. If sorcerers have more say over their spells, warlocks get more powerful output, and wizards are just there. They have more spells at their disposal. They're a great utility caster, and you can still build a powerhouse of a wizard. And they've, from older editions to now, they have the you start out squishy and you end up as the most powerful person in the party by level 20. But
yeah, with prep time they do well, and I that is part of like the
it's like
studying.
Batman.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
the
wizards are
Batman
Batman.
logic. Yeah, they got the utility belt.
Yeah, and I think wizard is great. I don't think it's a C or D class personally. I feel like to me it's a B tier because I would love it to be higher up. I love playing wizards, but they just, like, again, to go to what Luke Goblin said, they are not the masters of the arcane arts that they're supposed to be. That hat really does fall to sorcerer, which it shouldn't.
Yeah, if there was a way to like really abuse meta magic, really abuse like their DC saves to the point where like it's like insurmountable because they have the mastery, they have the highest checks, which I don't want it to be like purely a mechanical reason. I think they're kind of underwhelming, but like obviously as we established, the subclasses are kind of flavorless, which is usually a way to help.
And the subclasses don't add as much as I feel like they should. I mean, 5th edition is one of the, I think the first D&D where, edition where I feel like necromancers finally got the justice they deserved. And even still, necromancy isn't a top tier subclass.
Mm. I wish necromancy kind of appealed more to the fantasy of like being able to summon a legion of monsters and stuff without fucking
Yeah.
over with how the action economy works. Maybe by doing something with like swarm monsters and other things like that. Because like I always like the idea of playing like a summoning style class, but because of how 5e's action economy works, it usually doesn't end up being it could be strong. Like, of course, it's going to be strong to have a lot of bodies on the field, but it's strong for like all the wrong reasons. It's strong
Yeah.
in the way that pisses your DM off, and
If
like,
they,
Yeah.
yeah,
there should
because they
definitely
know for a
be
fucking fact you're not going to control all of them.
there should be a way to make summons benefit you that aren't action economy based. Like, let's say
Mm,
you had the ability to summon like 4 skeletons, and it gave you kind of the effect of
mm,
mirror image, where because you had this swarm of undead around you, they're kind of protecting you and helping you attack and such. So there's a chance that an attack hits one of them instead, and maybe they, because you have an undead army with you and they're all ganging up on someone,
mhm.
they aren't doing individual attacks, but they boost your attack chance and damage because their follow up by wailing on them and such. Something
You know
like
what this
that
sounds
could
like?
be a way to do it. But
Do you remember the Witch Doctor in Diablo 3?
I
There's
don't.
like there's a something I thought was really interesting is like there I'm pretty sure it was the Witch Doctor, to where there were attacks he made to where he'd summon things. It was like bats and things like that. And it's like, oh, these are like summons, but this is how he's fighting. So it's like, imagine that. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is an attack that summons zombies that grab your legs and hold you,
Yeah, that's the
like something like
grapple
that.
attempt.
I
Yeah,
also feel like there should be, and this is probably in the, I was going to say illusion, but that would be enchantment school. But they really don't have a possession mechanic in D&D, and I think that that is a missed opportunity. Now, I am a huge Dishonored
imagine.
fan, and I love the possession thing in Dishonored, so that could have something to do with it. But fucking, if the enchantment subclass had a feature at some point, and they might, I guess, I don't know if I'm misremembering, but if they had like an actual possession mechanic, that would be badass. Or like a,
That
even
needs to be
not
a
even
spell at the
wizard,
very least.
yeah, not even maybe a wizard, like a warlock getting that ability at some point would be dope. But
Hopping in someone's body.
yeah, but D&D just doesn't have a possession mechanic. They have charm out the ass, but no
Oh
possession.
yeah. Missed opportunity. Because being able to actually physically possess somebody's body could be really fun.
And yeah, maybe it's typically considered an evil act, but guess what? So's necromancy, and people pull it off.
I mean, hey.
So where are we putting wizard then? I feel like I want it to be higher up. I love wizards in the majority of things, but I feel like with the subclasses and the fact that they're really not the masters of the arcane that they should be, I do kind of feel like they are in C tier.
I will keep this in mind though, because I, as much as it's interesting that sorcerers have like the ability to do meta magic and all that stuff, when it comes to choice in a wizard's ability to be able to pick their spells, wizards like they don't have to do any of that shit of like waiting until next level before I can swap
Yeah,
things. Like they can just learn a new spell. And that could be incredibly useful to be able to
but
just swap out.
with the prepared spell mechanic, I don't have an exact number, but I would estimate the majority of people run with the same prepared list every day. Like the mechanic is there to swap it, but in second edition you didn't have to prepare spells. What was in your spell book was in your spell book, and you could do anything at once at any given time. But since you have a certain number that you can prepare each day in 5e, it gives you the, I think, the illusion of choice. You can swap out your prepared spells, and if you have a heads up on what you
Mhm.
need, then that's great. But how many people actually make significant changes to their prepared spell list, as opposed to like, I'm going to change Featherfall out for Longstrider?
I guess
Mm.
that's true. Yeah, a lot of it is just are they going to go with like the normal S tiers that they hope are just
Yeah.
catch-alls?
I mean, how many
Yeah.
wizards are actually not just running fucking Fireball, Magic Missile, Shield on repeat?
I will say it does kind of suck that wizards have to wait until 18th and then 20th level before they get the ability to just grab things that are in their spell book as opposed to like what they have to prepare. Because what was it? It was
Yeah.
spell mastery to where like it's like 18th level by the time you could just grab a first or second level spell and you could just cast whatever's in your spell book.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
weird because like signature spells, if you even if you think about it, like just like flavor wise, a wizard will be mastering some kind of spell, much earlier in their career for it to
Mhm.
become a signature spell. If
Mhm.
anything, there should be like different tiers and like you should be able to like almost make a custom spell that
Yeah.
gets strong.
Well, and
I would love more rules to make your own custom
they
spells,
exist. That's the thing, is they've
but
existed in
like
nearly every
built into the
edition, but
class.
they never do it. I feel like the prepared spell thing, I have a lot of gripes with prepared spells as a mechanic, but I feel like the prepared spells mechanic really does, like I said, illusion of choice with the wizard, and the fact that they really don't get to just change their spells, just like not just change like their prepared list. I mean, like manipulate their spells and create magic
Yeah.
effects and all that. I mean,
In
again, in
3.5,
that
they used to have metamagics for all casters, right?
I don't remember. I did not play much of 3.5.
You would, you take feats for them basically, and like you kind of prepare them ahead of time. I think for the wizard's case, right? Like when you're doing your like daily spell.
Hmm.
But so where we put in Wizard, I like I said, I hate to say it, but I think Wizard does fall into C tier for most people. I feel like a player who's actively looking for scrolls and spell books to learn spells and is constantly changing their prepared stuff and is really getting the most out of their subclass, I feel like they could make a solid A tier wizard. But typical wizard presentation and all that, and the fact that they are just overshadowed by sorcerer when it comes to the mastery of the arcane, I do feel like they're in C. What do you guys think?
I'm kind of thinking C as well.
I want to put him in B, but it's 2 against 1. So
I mean, I want to put them in
I'll say
A
C.
because I love them, but I just
Because that's the thing, right? Is like thematically, especially, I love wizards. They're iconic, and I have a take about fighter as well that I think justifies it being an S or A tier, as well as like rogues too, for that very same reason. Just because they're like the iconic original three like classes that existed, right?
yeah.
But it's a shame. I suppose we could put them down in C. I'll
Our
feel really
first,
sad about it though, because a wizard was
I
my first
agree.
character. My
Well, how about
wizard was
this?
my
How about
first
this?
character.
How many of us are ashamed to put it in C, but we feel like we want it to be higher?
Watsy, make wizard have more
Better.
ways to fuck around with their spells,
Make
or better.
wizard
Let's
great
just say
again.
better. Make wizard great again.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that.
All right, so we're putting it in C, but in our hearts it's an A. How about
Yes.
that? Okay. All right, up next. Is it back to me? I think it's back to me.
Yeah, it's back to you.
Also, I love how we said this might be our shortest episode yet, and we're at an hour.
Beautiful. As if on cue.
Sorcerer, as if on cue.
Scripted.
Paid actors.
Paid
Paid
actors.
actors.
All right, Sorcerer. I mean, you can do so much with the Sorcerer. Meta magic gives you so much freedom. The subclasses give you insane abilities, and you basically have the casting potential of a wizard just with fewer known spells.
And then give them an instrument, and apparently they're a better party piece and bard.
Exactly. I feel like while they do tend to lack flavor, they put a lot more on the player to build their flavor and lore for the specific character than the other classes we've reviewed so far. I do feel like they're a solid blank canvas. You can do almost anything with the sorcerer.
And part of that's just because of how bloodlines work, as well as being a spontaneous
Yeah.
caster too.
I
So
mean,
everything's really flexible.
you want to be a frontlining melee sorcerer, you do the draconic bloodline, get your scales to boost your AC, and eventually you can fucking fly. And you want to be a sneaky shadow mage, then you go shadow sorcerer. And you want to be, I mean, you can do anything. You want to be a healer, or your party needs a healer, but you don't want to play a cleric. Fucking, what is it? Divine Soul?
Yeah, no,
Something like that.
I believe that's what it's called.
I like Divine Soul Sorcerer. They're
Yeah.
kind of OP, but they're fun. Like
And
remember
Sorcerer
thematically,
that
has-
in the class too, and even the class had some cool flavor to it.
See,
I'm
that's
glad
the
to
thing
see
that
it just
sucks.
stayed around.
It sucks when a subclass is both overpowered, thematically really cool, and like it just does a lot of interesting things. It
Yeah.
sucks when it hits like that trifecta, because then it's like if you tone any one of those things down, you risk ruining the whole thing. Because it's like, yeah, as a divine soul sorcerer, you can get cleric spells. Maybe that can get a little wild, and then you can heal and have things like that. But then it's like, yeah, you're also like the progeny of an angel. And that's kind of
Yeah.
badass. Like that's pretty fucking metal. Like there's a lot of
Well,
things you could do with that. Like,
there's
why
a
are you
shit
here? Why aren't you
ton.
over there with your angelic fucking progenitor? What
Hmm.
happened? Was there a falling out? Were you cast down from here? Like, there's a lot of opportunities for stories along with the amount of power that you get from the mechanic.
Yeah, there's like I said, it's a blank slate, blank canvas. You can do so much flavor wise with it just by how you design it. It doesn't have as much flavor built in, but you can do anything with it. And I think Sorcerer has like, what do they have, the most subclass options or just a fuck ton? I
They
mean,
have a ton, and
technically,
even
I think,
homebrew wise, it's seemingly
yeah,
endless, right? Like, too, it's
yeah.
very easy to modify and make homebrew stuff to it as well, which
What do they
sometimes
got?
for other
They got like
classes it's
eight.
hard to evoke that.
I know that like clerics have their deities, which can change some stuff too, but and there's a lot of domains for clerics, so they
Yeah,
might be the
domains are nearly
most.
endless too when you
But
start.
I think, I
I'd say
mean,
clerics have the most. Yes, sorcerer has like around eight that are official.
yeah, which is still a good number. I feel like Sorcerer is kind of honestly short and sweet. I think it is, while it's kind of bland flavor wise at a core, you can do so much with it because it's not, you build your story around being a sorcerer. You build a sorcerer to fit your character's story, and you can do that with almost any story because there's
Yeah,
a
it's the
subclass for
result of
everything.
a magical circumstance.
Mm.
Yeah. So I feel like Sorcerer mechanically is borderline S tier. There are just a couple things that fall short.
As for
But
sorcerer,
that's for
Yeah.
Sorcerer.
In some ways it reminds me of like superhero origins, right? You take
you
the
kind of are, right?
source and then you
Yeah,
make the magic. Like the end result is the magic of the
all
like the
superheroes are
inciting
sorcerers.
event or whatever.
I mean, a
So
lot are, I'd say, if you
yeah,
return like a superhero. Like, a lot of superhero magic people wouldn't be wizards, they'd be sorcerers, you know what I mean?
yeah, for real. I mean, I think the only superhero that's really a wizard as opposed to sorcerer is Doctor Strange. That's just because he
Yeah,
straight up
Batman.
studied his shit.
yeah.
Batman.
Yeah,
So I
Oh yeah,
Batman.
think
yeah, that's true. We talked about that Batman with prep time. Yeah, wizard.
But even then, has no magic. So I guess the wizard flavors really lack in
It's
their
fucking
boys in
magic. There's some
5e.
shit he does. There's
Yeah,
some
no,
shit
no,
he does in
it's
those comics.
magic.
It's magic.
yeah,
At least
Let's be
plot
real.
armor. He's got shield.
He's got shield, exactly. How the fuck else is he able to do things like, I'm just gonna leave that open. I'm not gonna bring up any specific examples. If you've read any Batman, you'd know what I'm talking about.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think mechanically, and the fact that while they're bland as a base but can do anything story wise, I do feel like Sorcerer is A tier.
Yeah, a lot of the things you said, I'll probably say for Cleric as well, to be fair. It's just they have good tools.
Yeah.
Not a lot of restrictions, a lot of
Sorcerer
good
is a
options.
box of Legos and you can build whatever the hell you want with it.
Yeah, I
Also,
could
they're a
say
charisma
A.
caster, which is really easy for multi-classing.
So busted.
Yeah.
There are way too many charisma casters.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's the same problem in Pathfinder. I thought in Pathfinder 2e it was going to be different, and then lo and behold, there's like fucking 6 charisma classers, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh god.
Yeah,
Well,
All
and
their
right,
there's things
how do
you
I
solutions are
don't.
how do I
marshals.
divvy up gear?
Well, like
Yeah.
paladins have no need to be a charisma caster. They could totally be a wisdom caster. They're half cleric. They could be
Shit.
wisdom.
I'll say this. I could make that argument potentially for warlocks, to where warlocks could be charisma or intelligence. Maybe. I'd say that. Because
Maybe.
especially for a great old one warlock, I don't think you like beseeched Cthulhu. I think you read up about Cthulhu, and then you read up about his rights, and then like you learn things from them. I've played enough
I
Call of Cthulhu
agree.
adventures to be able to just like comfortably say that there are a lot of great old one warlocks that I would say could be intelligence based casters instead of charisma.
I like the idea of sorcerers being constitution casters, but obviously
Yeah.
be busted.
It'd be
I
busted, yeah.
I personally don't think many classes make sense to be charisma casters. I think charisma casters were just a result of charisma being everybody's dump stat, and they were like, we need to balance this. So,
Not
but
wrong,
that's
yeah.
a different debate. I think Sorcerer A tier is solid, and we are back to Crow.
Okay, let's do it.
Monk or Cleric? Cleric.
Scripted
As if
again.
on
All
cue.
right. Okay, Cleric. Cleric. Well, once again, in Balding Gate,
Balding Gate.
my first in my first playthrough, my hubby was Shadowheart, so obviously Cleric is S tier because of that.
Yeah, S for Shadowheart.
S for Shadowheart.
Shadowheart.
And I have nothing else left to say. No, I do have more things to say about Cleric.
The fact that they're busted as hell.
Cleric has an incredibly great spell list. If you've ever played a Cleric and you looked at the spell, they got a muy bueno spell list.
Muy bueno. And it expands with their subclass.
Yes. Also, if you played any official adventures, turn undead, goated ability. Why? Because D&D loves throwing fucking undead in almost every single official adventure.
And it's almost always low tier undead. So the ones where turn undead effects.
Yeah, it's as if they know there's going to be a cleric in the party. There will just randomly be like 10 skeletons. And then it's like, I wonder who could do something about this.
Like when you think about it, what other class really has you win against a certain type? Like not even Ranger gets that, and that's their thing, right?
Yeah.
That's true. Well, and it ties into the base that a cleric is like. The first thing people think of when they think cleric is look at my holy god, fuck you're undead. But that doesn't make so much sense for different subclasses of cleric, like a trickery cleric. I don't think turn undead makes much sense for. I do feel like turn undead should be a subclass channel divinity instead of an every class channel divinity. But at that point, there's the argument of what would you give them for a channel divinity, and maybe they're just their god helps them with something and makes their attack more powerful. Well, that's a smite. So
I saw someone who worked on a series of different like warlock subclasses that they brought into the game, along with like a bunch of warlock invocations and stuff. I forget who it was. Who used to be a lot. They used to be on r/Unearthed Arcana a lot. But something they did when they made a cleric changes is to address this very same problem. Is they opened up the idea with the turn ability. So it would be different kinds of turning, basically. Like, for instance, there'd be like a turn fiend one. It's like, okay, if you're like a life cleric or if you're a light cleric, maybe you'd have or a death cleric, you'd have something like turn undead because it's more thematic. But yeah, if you're something that's like a war cleric, it's like, what are you going to be turning exactly? Maybe fiends and celestials, other things that rely on like extremes and violence and stuff like that. It's
or
like, okay,
fucking maybe war clerics turning is based off of like weaker enemies, and it's causing fear in them, kind of thing. Like,
oh yeah, see, there are interesting things you could do with it, to where it's like maybe this one only works for humanoids. This one only works. You pick specific monster types, and that way you can kind of open it up to every kind of domain of cleric has their own version of turn that isn't necessarily about undead. Undead though, still very useful to have. Just because there are a lot of most things that will try to kill you in D&D, if you look across all the different books, are going to have some kind of undead servant, are undead themselves, or will use undead to stop you in some capacity.
Well, it's because the classic trope of the big bad is, let me raise this army of undead. I mean, it's a classic trope. So,
or they're working with necromancers or whatever. So it always comes up. Yeah. Or they have something that turns the thing they kill into some kind of zombie / thrall / whatever. There's always a way to be able to find undead to be able to turn, and because of that channel divinity is relevant throughout the entire game.
Yeah, no, I think. I mean, we've been harping on the turn undead, but there's so much more to cleric as well. I mean, I think mechanically, and part of it's because nobody wanted to play cleric. Like I'm the last person to show up to character creation, so I guess I'm playing a cleric because we need a healer. Like, nobody wanted to play cleric, so they made them the most powerful class in the game. I mean, cleric,
it's just the best everything. It's best buffer, debuffer, striker, tank.
You want to be a tank and a striker, war domain, or something that gives you all those proficiencies. You want to be a healer, life domain, light domain. You want to be a wizard. There's
Light domain's
knowledge
good.
domain. Light domain gives you fire spells. Like it is honestly, I feel like, I mean, not
Isn't
to just
Twilight
hijack it,
busted? I,
but
I forgot if Twilight's
Twilight
busted.
is so busted because of the Twilight Sanctuary giving you temp HP at the end of giving everyone temp HP at the end of every turn for pretty much an entire combat. It is
Plus your
insane.
cleric level.
Plus your cleric level. So like cleric power wise, mechanics wise, the vast number of options you have for role
Endless
play.
flavor options. Yeah.
The only thing is, I think they are a little lower on the fun tier for the average person because of the whole, oh, I don't want to have to play a cleric, but literally play a cleric once and realize how much power is there and how wide of a range you have to build your character within cleric. I think cleric is S tier.
I agree.
Yeah, no,
I will say this to anybody who's having any gripes about playing a cleric. I think it mostly is holdover because we get a lot of people, especially coming into D&D right now, that are coming in from video games, right? There's this holdover that the person who's like I worship my god and I'm a hoity-toity fucking asshole and I all I do is I'm just the glorified heal bot. Like
Mercy
that
res.
doesn't mercy
Yeah.
res. I need healing.
Yeah.
You don't need to be that character. I played mostly offensive clerics that also run support, whether or not that's offensive support with debuffing or whether or not that's defensive support with things like warding bond and other things like that. There are a lot of ways to play clerics. You are not a heal bot. Do not let someone pressure you to play a cleric to be a heal bot. Hit them with flame strike and yeah.
But the other thing is, even if you want to be a purely supportive, like support cleric, you don't deal a single point of damage in an entire day. There's still so much fun you can have with it because of the vast number of support spells and abilities. Even if you're a heal bot, I mean, again, you don't have to be a heal bot, and not everyone enjoys playing that. But when you go life domain cleric and you get certain things that improve the healing that you do, or fucking grave domain is one of my favorite for cleric, and it's one of the most powerful abilities it has is I don't remember what it's called, but when you're healing somebody, casting a healing spell on someone who is at 0 hit points, you do max healing, and it's like it completely changes things because grave domain's still great as a support. It's almost entirely support. It feels like it should be like a martial as well, but your path to the grave where you give a creature vulnerability against the next attack dealt by you or an ally,
It's crazy.
like it's crazy. So you can play a support cleric without being a support bot.
Can't they also cancel critical hits? I know that came up a lot
Yes, I think so.
in Critical Role, because if I remember correctly, Taliesin Jaffe's character, Caduceus, was also a grave cleric. Very, very goated class.
It's a great class. So yeah, cleric, solid S tier.
Yeah, easy S tier.
All right, Luke Goblin, you're up. Ranger.
Let's go.
I mean, we've kind of had a rant about this before, but I'll kind of like hit the important notes, which is essentially the system's probably failed Ranger more than Rangers failed the system, in the sense that everything they're good at is something that D&D doesn't really care about. They'll do like survival checks, basic
or
stuff,
something that everyone else can do.
Yeah, basically. Like what I feel like a ranger would almost be like the perfect DMPC, quest giver, guide character, whatever. Because what they'll do is they'll do all the hard work of finding the thing for you, point to it, and say, "All right, now you do the thing." Because really, that's all they're like. That's the aesthetic they're going for.
And
I
they're
guess
decent marshals. Don't get me wrong, but they're. I mean, it's the meme: play a fighter with a bow, because Rangers get some cool fighters. Fighter spells. They get some cool Ranger spells that are unique to them, but most of them aren't really that game changing. And the ones that are, again, if you have someone who wants to play a Ranger but they don't want to be mechanically hurt and they want to go fighter for the theme, that comes to where the DM can be like, okay, here's a bow that lets you cast a volley. Like there's ways that you can easily make a fighter with a bow surpass Ranger in pretty much every single way.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, and I do like Cleric, and I said it in another podcast episode. I think Cleric's fine. but that's because it falls so much on the DM to enable the cleric. And so I think cleric's fine in the games that I play and that I've played in, because with the right, with DMs that I play with, they are great at making characters shine, giving them moments where their character can come into the spotlight. But with just looking at base rules, the cleric really is overshadowed by pretty much anything else that can use a bow.
You said cleric for all of that, by the way, when you meant to say
Ranger. I was looking at the whole time. I was staring at our S tier stuff, and
I
my
was
eyes
in
were on the
awe.
cleric symbol. No,
I didn't want to stop you because you're going on a tear.
Ranger can be overshadowed by almost anything. And again, going into Sorcerer, if you can find a way to give your Sorcerer proficiency with a bow, if they don't already have it, fucking.
I wouldn't go that far, because when it comes to that, like, mechanically, here's the thing. If you're just gonna care about like the damage and whatnot, Rangers are very powerful. Let's be real.
Yeah,
like Rangers are very strong.
Good on damage.
Yeah. If that's all you care about, then don't listen to the complaints that you're going to be hearing about Ranger, because what we're going to be talking about mostly is just going to be how does it feel. There's a reason why
they have.
Yeah, there's a reason why this ended up happening that was always very confusing for Watson to deal with. They talked about satisfaction levels when it came to different classes, and then when they compared that to the surveys of people who are coming back saying that they continue to play Ranger, the amount of people playing Ranger is incredibly high, even though satisfaction was really low. Now, here's the reason for that. It's because mechanically, and if we're talking mechanically, we only are talking about the pillar of combat. In combat, they're very strong. They have no issues in combat. I keep saying combat because it's, one of the pillars that D&D cares about the most. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, the thematic of a ranger isn't about fighting. It's about being a fucking ranger.
A survivalist.
And what is a fucking ranger? Yeah, exactly. It's Aragorn getting down, looking at the tracks, trying to find out where the hobbits went. I don't get that from this class.
And we talked about before how, using Aragorn as the staple for a ranger, how a DM can absolutely enable that and give you countless opportunities to play that kind of character, but the system itself doesn't enable that, and that's the problem.
Yeah, it's just Viggo Mortensen stubbing his toe on the helmet in real life, and then I guess he goes up to fight in Helm's Deep. Yeah, that's the class. And then he fights in Helm's Deep, but at 2 times speed, and kills all the orcs. So it's like, he's really good at fighting, but like he does the exploration shit, and then it's like, what the fuck's happening? What is this? He's just skipping over everything. Like, I really dislike how they handled exploration in 5th edition. It's very bare bones. They've even talked about this in the recent D&D 1 video with playtesting and shit. So I hope that there are some kind of fundamental changes that end up happening because of it. I feel like they're going to be, and as a consequence, it will make Ranger better. So
people might resent it for being mandatory then if it actually does its job
the
well.
Other classes then might suffer. I don't
but I mean, fucking clerics feel mandatory, right? But every class should have to feel like that, I think. Yeah. Every class should feel mandatory.
Kind of mandatory.
Yeah, if you don't have something in your party, you should be missing out on something.
And that's why there's like the original trifecta, right? There's like the original like classes. You had to fill one of each role, and then over time they expanded roles. But really, like if you're missing one, you should be punished in those scenarios.
Like, the thing that's good about that, right, is by having roles that you don't have fulfilled, you now have weaknesses and strengths for the party. Those aren't bad things. Having confines is a good thing. Well, it's a sandbox, not a fucking, like, you're not just in the woods by yourself and there's a little spit of sand. It's like, no, like there's a confined area.
Like, for example, when you go to a new town, you have to hire a guide now because you don't have a ranger. And
I was just going to say that. Maybe. Yeah. Like that's like you said with the DMPC
for
kind of
thing. It'd be fun.
Well, yeah. But the fact that if Ranger really is something you need and no one's playing a Ranger, then you have to hire a guide to get you to that Goblin's camp because he knows the woods better than anyone.
You'll die climbing the mountaintop before you actually reach the thing you're looking for.
Have you ever had in a campaign before where the PCs are looking not even just for a guide like in that example, which, I mean, a good example would even be Tomb of Annihilation, where if you don't have someone who could do the navigation, you hire a navigator, right? Like that's a thing that can happen. But like people already do this when it comes to having a wizard in the party or a cleric in the party. Like if no one wants to play that role, then you get a fucking hireling. you know, because it's nice to be able to fill up that gap if you're able to do so.
I feel like if exploration was more of a required thing in game, mechanically, then it really would. Because I hear what you're saying with, oh, I want to hire a wizard, so we have this ability. But I mean, how regularly do you guys hear about people actually hiring NPCs? And it's a
I
massive
feel like it
missed
should happen more
opportunity.
often.
I agree. I
Well,
feel like it
the
should
secret
happen more
is,
often.
yeah, the secret is you give them one for free on an offhand comment, and then they just won't let you leave them behind in town. That's the secret.
For I thought you were
Give
going to
them,
defer route. You
I
give
was
them
saying,
one
give him
for
a funny
free.
name or voice, and people are like, "Yeah, this guy, he belongs to us now." He's like, he wants to leave. It's like, yeah, that's not up to him.
I thought you were saying give
Kidnap
them
him.
one for free, but the next one they have to pay for. Go the sales route with it. Like, I've given
Honestly?
you the one now, and you like it, but you can't keep them
Next one's 10
anymore.
gold. They're like, we don't need him.
Yeah,
Dies in the
yeah,
forest.
right. But right now they have the ability to say we don't need it and not die. But if exploration had more risk to it, if the exhaustion mechanic wasn't just based on sleeping near as much, if it was based off of, like, imagine if a snowy mountain, all of it's considered difficult terrain, and imagine if you got exhaustion for a certain amount of time traveled in difficult terrain. Like, you could only travel half the distance in difficult terrain before you got a level of exhaustion.
The
But
thing
if you
that
had a
sucks.
ranger, then they could find a route or something that would make it to where they were essential.
Here's the thing: is that there's going to be someone in the comments who are going to say this at some point, and they're technically right. There are rules for this, but here's the thing: they're usually completely specific to certain adventures, because something
Yeah.
that D&D does to make up for the fact that they don't really have much exploration is that every new module that has any amount of exploration basically ships with new fucking exploration rules every single time. You saw that with
Yeah.
Descent to Avernus, you saw it with Tomb of Annihilation, etc. They do this every fucking time because there isn't really a baseline. So then the issue then becomes, imagine it's like, I hope there's someone in the comments that gets this reference. It's like playing a paladin in early World of Warcraft, where you're playing a class that changes basically all the fucking time, depending on what the devs are feeling like today.
Yeah,
What do we want to make
Yeah.
it do today?
Yeah, exactly. That's like what playing a ranger feels like, and that's why I'm inclined to call it bad for that reason, because you're a slave to their whims basically. Especially if you play a lot of pre-made adventures like that, you're a slave to whatever they say is cool for exploration this year, until the designers for next year's adventure come by and say, actually, we don't like that, so we changed it.
Well, and
And
it's
your
again
mechanic,
very
yeah,
adventure based.
exactly. And that is shitty.
I
Because then you
do.
have really inconsistent abilities. You don't
Yeah.
know when they're going to work.
Where
Yeah.
we place it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they do have awesome role playability. And because of that, I want to say that they have a lot of fun factor too. But because of how mechanically hurt they are, given the lack of exploration and such, I do think that the fun factor is actually lower. I think they are C tier. I don't think they're D tier,
I think
because
that's fair.
they do fit in certain things. And if you're running an official module that does have exploration mechanics, then they are great. But on average, I feel like they're pretty poor just for that reason. And again, my whole argument in the earlier episode where I went off about it saying Rangers are fine, leave them alone, is because in games that allow exploration and where the DM can give you that opportunity to shine, they are essential. In games where the DM doesn't homebrew that and you're just looking at raw mechanics, they are vastly underwhelming.
Yeah, I actually have two rules I kind of want to throw out in terms of survival, because I was thinking about like what makes sense for a ranger. I think when it comes to like going down like a path, for example, if you have like a couple different options, I feel like the ranger should have. If you don't have a ranger, someone can make a check for it. I feel like the random encounter CR rating should be automatically bumped in some way.
Yeah.
If you like don't
Bring
pick up
back
on like
reaction
which,
rolls. Bring
yeah,
back
Well,
reaction rolls.
there's
kind of, yeah.
so in what is it, Icewind Dale, that campaign setting, they have a wild encounter mechanic that is so badass and I love it. And you basically roll your encounter die twice, and the first die is for your encounter, And the way it kind of works is the first dice for your encounter and the second die is for the severity of the weather. And certain encounters are more likely to happen based off of the weather conditions. So you like I'm trying to remember exactly how it works, but I think the chart is like based off of the two numbers. Here's what's going to happen. And so you can get certain things more often than not, but certain things become available as encounters based on what the weather roll was. And that
All
is a
rangers,
really cool mechanic. And if rangers had the ability to kind of bump one of those
yeah,
numbers to avoid a bad encounter or, you know, reduce the effects of the bad weather on
Yeah,
you,
kind of
that'd
what
be
I'm
cool.
thinking. Like because you're knowing what to look for, so you know to avoid the bad, like like
mm.
Yeah.
like footprints in like the ground, for example. You're gonna be like, yeah,
All
let's not go
rangers
that
would
way. That's a
need, right,
lair.
in that specific case, is to be able to roll twice, and they can pick which result they want,
Yeah. That would be great. Now,
and that's
part of the
already makes them
problem
better.
is like some DMs prefer to do no random encounters, they do them all scripted. And that does mitigate some of that effect. But again, that's not a mechanic thing because mechanics allow for random encounters in those adventures.
And another one, kind of like the other end of it, I feel like covering your tracks is something a ranger should be able to do better because there
Oh,
should be
yeah.
some kind of punishment to not covering your tracks during like, a long traversing style, even if it's just
When you're
bandits
being
attacking you at night,
followed and
let
yeah.
alone, yeah, that, or maybe even just random monsters coming to your encampment because you didn't do a good job of hiding, your food source
Mhm.
and various other things, basic survival things that don't have a check right now, but should.
Things like that make me wish that D&D took some notes from other elements of like when it comes to like TTRPG design, when it comes to random encounters especially. There's something I looked up about called the underclock die, well the underworld die, and there was another one that Indestructible was doing. It was like an escalation die. There's something that I found interesting about that when it came to a random encounter, to where instead of it being completely random like that, to where it's like things and actions you commit to end up building up what is essentially a meter, and then once that meter fills up, you have a random encounter. What I like about the idea of having to keep track of things like, getting rid of your tracks or keeping quiet and doing things like that is like, okay, you can see a tangible benefit to this little bar that's going to build up. So then we can actually play stealthy and avoid certain paths and avoid certain encounters and things like that. And it will keep our bar low so then we don't aggro a bunch of enemies, as we're going across a place. Like,
I
and
love
to be
that.
able to, yeah, right? Like, and to be
That's
able
so
to
cool.
actually have something to keep track of like that that has a mechanical benefit. If a ranger had a direct tie to that kind of mechanic, I would immediately get rid of where I want to put them, which is D tier, and put them somewhere closer to A or S if they had anything close to resembling that.
Right.
But
And
unfortunately, we live in a world where WotC doesn't really give a fuck about the exploration pillar. They might soon, but they currently don't. And because of that, I put them in D for the WotC fix your exploration.
yeah, I think I'd put them in C or
Watsy.
D.
I I don't want to put anything in D, but I do feel like if anything goes in D on this list, it is going to be Rangers. So
I
we might
might
as well
have a
put it
second
there.
one for D. I'm not sure. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah?
All right, we'll get
No
there. We'll get.
spoilers.
Yeah, no
All right,
spoilers.
so let's put Ranger in D tier. It has so much opportunity to do more by the DM, but you know, basing something's effectiveness off of how the DM's going to run the game does not justify poor mechanics by WotC.
Yeah. Especially because those mechanics vary so wildly between adventures.
Yeah,
But anyway, we've harped on enough, right?
we've harped on it enough. I mean, it's Ranger. It was going to be a long one. Is it? It's me now, or is it?
Yeah.
Okay. And Monk.
Yeah, that's the other
Mm.
one.
I figured that's where you were going with it. So I don't think that Monk is D tier. I think Monk can be a lot of fun because my brother's playing a Monk. The caveat to this is
Uh-huh.
Monk, and so when I said earlier he's playing a bard in the pirate game, technically I was wrong. He's a dual class. Monk is his primary.
This guy's a
What'd I
liar.
say?
He's
But he was
shilling for
playing bard
Bard.
well. The point was to play bard for it, but
Yeah, and then what ended up happening, huh? Keep going.
Anyway, I think Monk is cool, and vastly underutilized for what they're really supposed to be. Like it feels like WotC didn't know where to go with it. Like they said, let's make a ninja, but make it a monk. Let's make the avatar. Let's make Aang, but make it a monk. And that makes some sense. Don't get me wrong, but they kind of just went all over. You want to be a peaceful, serene monk? Great. But your buddy could also be from the same monastery as you and be a murder hobo. And it's just part of who he is and part of his class. So I think monks are just all over the place. I think they can be fun if you have, the right kind of build for it. But like Way of the Four Elements sucks at base.
Yeah.
The fact that flavor wise they are just all over the place, they just kind of feel like the black sheep.
I wish vows were core, like the 3.5 feet trees that were like, you put certain restrictions for certain bonuses, but just really flush that out.
Well, unlike paladins, their oaths give them certain things, but if they break their oaths, there's a problem. Monks should have a mechanic like that. If you are
like Vow of Poverty was like the cliche one because it was like the most broken one when people used it, and even then it wasn't strong compared to actually purchasing magic items correctly for your wealth per level.
Yeah, no, I feel like monk. I mean, I don't know how much we have to harp on monk, like how much we have to say about
it's just missing a lot, really.
It's what?
I was saying, like, there's not much to harp on. It's just missing things.
Yeah, it feels like there's.
It's like uses a lot of attributes, but none of them well. Rather,
yeah, well, and it's all over the place too. You need to have a high wisdom, but you also need to have a high strength or dex. But you should also have a high con because you need hit points, and those 3 ability score splits are just so hard to manage effectively.
And what's the payoff? I guess really.
Yeah, I like monk
Stunning
as a
strike.
concept.
That's like where most of its budget is.
Yeah, well, and stunning strike is super powerful.
That's
it's goated, yeah.
But
and maybe the most.
What
flavorful.
other abilities do they have?
Yeah, Flurry of Blows is also really good, just because getting more attacks in is always going to be better. But those are like the 2 abilities I'd say that, especially with Stunning Strike, that it takes up so much of its power budget that's probably what scares them into not wanting to give monks that much. And because of that, I feel like it's probably missing a lot of things that you feel like it's missing. For me, I've only ever really played a monk. I want to say once, and I had a player who played one of the shadow monks once. So I can't really say too much when it comes to monk. So I'll let you 2 fight over it.
I mean, I just feel like they're a good base to build on, but the building was never really done on them. And what you were saying about the 2 key abilities, Stunning Strike and Flurry of Blows, being great, and that's why WotC's afraid to give them more things to do.
Yeah, mostly Stunning Strike.
I hear you, but key points are a limited resource. So giving them more things to do doesn't really make them too much more powerful. It's like what we were talking about with bards, where the bardic inspiration is used for like every class feature and they only get so many of them. It's the inverse problem where with monks, the only thing that's really worth your key points is Stunning Strike and Flurry of Blows, at least in early levels. And so they need some more abilities that use key points to balance that out. Where do you think it should go, Loot? We've lost Loot.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was asking where you think monk should go.
Oh, I was saying like I know I said it was D because I feel like it was unfinished. I could see the argument for putting in C or B, depending on where you like it flavor wise. But yeah, there's so much more I'd like to see added to it.
I agree.
And not punishing, like it requires a widespread of like attributes, kind of what we're saying, that weren't utilized well. And then like even stuff like, okay, so you give them some better movement, like it's kind of like with Barbarian, where it really isn't a factor. It's kind of nice, but like all the bonuses they get, kind of like they have good saves. It's kind of nice, but really, how do they utilize it? I guess they're in your face and they make the save more.
How would you change monk?
So one of the things I would want is kind of like similar to 3.5, how they had all these vows. I'd really like to see them have like your vow helps build resistances to certain things, because I do like the idea of like the fact that they have good saves historically. Like I almost wish your vow helped you be good at those resistances, as well as just augmenting some basic like like martial attributes, like more than just speed, for example.
I
Mhm.
I'm
think
trying to think of a way to word it, but what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say that I think part of the problem of Monk is the majority of its features feel like subclass features. Um, Timeless body, you don't age. Okay, you can't be
It's
affected
kind of
by
like a
disease or
ribbon.
something. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you can't be affected by disease or poison. That's great, but how does that apply to certain of the subclasses? You know, it feels like most of the monk abilities are what should be subclass features of like a classic monastery monk, and the majority of the monk subclasses are so easy to just wipe away from that monastery background. So I feel like monk flavor wise is actually missing a lot because you get so much from the concept of look at me, I'm a well mannered monastery raised monk, but then you
Mhm.
could play a fucking ninja. And it's like it doesn't make a ton of sense. And I agree with what Luke's saying. It feels unfinished.
And there
You know,
is already a
it's
class that's really good at bare knuckle brawling that's not on this
Yeah,
list, but would be a good example of a
the
core base that
pugilist.
works a little bit better.
I feel like just based on what you guys are saying here, it sounds like just indirectly, I feel like it got to this point that some of the problems it has with its own Orientalism ends up leading to a confused identity as to what it's actually supposed to be doing. And I think they've even recognized that when it comes to some of the D&D 1 stuff that's going to be coming up with monks. I don't know how far they're going to go, though. It seems like mostly what they're going to be doing is just changing key to discipline. Other than that, I don't really know what else that's going to end up looking like. But yeah, it is a little confusing that there's this, the whole thing is based on the back of Tibetan monk. Like you
Hmm.
said, the timeless body, those things. It's like those are all myths based on that same kind of archetype, and they get abilities that all correspond with that. But yeah, like you're saying, what the fuck does that say about a ninja? Because let's be real, the shadow monk is just a ninja.
It
Like
really
that's
is.
what it is. It's a
Yeah.
ninja with ninja magic, and that's fine. Like it's okay to be a ninja with ninja magic. The weird thing is it seems to not really have an understanding of what links these things together to be able to make that kind of archetype be a thing without it feeling kind of weird, at least aesthetically, you know?
Yeah, I'd
I
love to like maybe like that's why I kind of always harp on like the vow mechanic. Maybe
Mm,
like it there should be something extra where it's like it really differentiates from class to class cuz like Zyle was saying, it really is just it's one note, and really any class that's one note at this point got rolled into a subclass of a more popular class, like stuff like Divine Soul became a
mm.
sorcerer thing instead of its own like base class because there wasn't
right.
much meat to it.
I think the fucking Scion should be its own fucking class, but Watsy disagrees. But
Yeah, that one is the weird one.
I have no idea why they did that. And they tried to make a wizard one, and then it didn't work out. I could. I
Yeah,
don't even
Full
want to talk
red,
about
full
Scion
it.
should have
red.
just
Yeah.
cannibalized the rest of them, you know, like the Soul Knife and all that stuff should have just been cannibalized by them.
I will
Worst
say
case.
this: Soul Knife Rogue and Psy Warrior Fighter are pretty cool subclasses, so I'm okay with that. I still think you can live in a world where the Soul Knife Rogue and the Psy Warrior Fighter can coexist while also there being a Scion subclass. I mean not Scion subclass, a Scion full class.
Well, I mean,
Right.
Eldritch Knight is the hybrid of a wizard and a
Yeah,
fighter. So why can
exactly.
they not have Scion based subclasses while Scion is a class
Fucking
itself?
exactly.
Now, in older editions, Scions, psionic classes were busted as hell. But
As they
Right.
that's
should be.
not a reason. Yeah, but that's not a reason why they shouldn't exist. It just means they need
Yeah.
balanced right.
And then they
Um,
made the Mystic, and then they made it busted again. And then they didn't
yep.
fix it this time. That was the
Yep.
only difference.
So I think Monk, I mean, how my brother plays Monk is great, but we use so much homebrew in it to make it make more sense. And so I think after talking about it, I agree with Luke Goblin that I think it's D tier purely because it, like you said, Crow, it doesn't know what it is. Monk is based so solely off of one concept, and then the majority of the subclasses say, but people weren't playing Monk, so let's give them a ninja.
It comes off like in an effort to, I guess, attempt to be less Orientalist, they made it more Orientalist.
Right.
Yeah, really.
Yeah,
They're like,
you
what
know,
else do people like? Samurai?
Asian things, you know,
Yeah.
we just thought we put some Asian things into it. You put a samurai in it, okay, cool. We put that in there. Avatar, that's Asian. We throw
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
even
comes off
Drunken
as really
Master,
fucking
really.
ignorant. It really
Yeah.
does.
Well,
Like
and
Drunken Master is Kensai. Like,
yeah, and to be
Jesus
honest,
Christ.
I don't.
I'm
I feel like
surprised the samurai made it. I'm so glad it was a fighter subclass.
and not monk and not
I was
monk.
about to
it
say, oh
feels.
no, please don't do it. Don't
Yeah,
do
no,
it.
I said
Don't
that kind
make
of as
the
a joke, but it feels like they would. It's like, oh yeah, flurry of blades. There we go.
Flurry of
Samurai.
blades.
Hey, you get a
And
katana.
honestly-
It's different. It's got a dex score. And it's like, no, please. It's just a sword. It's not different. It's just a fucking sword. Just let it be a sword.
Yeah. No, I think monk. I don't think there's a problem with having a sort of genre or aesthetic locked class. I think if you want to make monks that typical Tibetan monastery monk, that's okay, but you shouldn't have the subclasses that confuse it. So they
Yeah,
either
the
need
ninja
to
should be a rogue then.
I don't disagree, and I think that they either need to rework monk as a base where its core mechanics are then put into a subclass for that Tibetan monk kind of thing, and then it gets new core mechanics. Or I think they need to strip the majority of the subclasses, rebalance them, give them to other classes, and then make more subclasses that make sense based off of that aesthetic lock.
Because what is the monk's identity? Unarmed strike and good saves.
Yeah,
If you strip away everything else.
And exactly, it needs more than that.
Because originally, when the monk was designed, if I recall correctly, it was just based on like what was it, like Gygax's love of like Jackie Chan movies and shit like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, like
No
wuxia.
improvised weapon damage. That's crazy. Come on.
See, that's the thing that's crazy to me too. Is like if we want to go back to what its roots were, then it's not even really following those roots. Because like if you want to keep going, those martial arts movies kept going. We have shit like The Raid now, and you're telling me, yeah, we don't have fucking improvised,
Okay.
yeah, like improvised weapon mastery, things like that. Like, if we're just talking about like beating ass and like pseudo mystical abilities and wuxia and shit like that, it's like, okay, like we can do martial arts movies mixed with those things, but we can do modern martial arts movies if that's what we want to do. And I don't know, like I think there are better ways to go about it without kind of coming off as ignorant as they have with this.
And here's something that I think I would do to change monk. If we were to stick to the traditional concept of it, is make their subclasses more based off of fighting styles. And I don't mean like the fighting styles, but are there's so many different types of martial arts out there, and they're all meant to achieve different things. Let's say you want to have a blade monk. Okay, you have a blade monk, but have it still based off of the vows, the tenets, and things like that. So I think it just ultimately needs either a mechanical rework or an identity rework.
So I've been refraining from talking about the monk because this is my take. And I feel like you're coming close to where my take is. I don't think the monk should exist.
Because
Because
it feels like
if we're talking about a martial
it
artist,
should be a subclass.
there's a class that does martial arts. Here's something people are fucking weird about. Did you know attacking someone with a sword isn't as simple as picking up a sword and hitting people? It
takes
turns out
training.
it turns out it takes
fighting
training.
styles too, even maybe.
You could even call it martial arts. Did you know that? That's wacky.
It's wild.
So
That's
kind of when I talk
wild.
about how Divine Soul was so one note, they made it a subclass. You're kind of
Yeah.
on that boat.
Yeah, I don't
It's just
necessarily
a-
disagree. Monk as it is really should just be a subclass. And
It's a
the
multi-class fighter
subclasses-
with a paladin.
Yeah, and they should take the subclasses of monk and just scatter them to the other classes as is. If they
Add
want to
her
do a
the
rework,
wins.
that's great. But as is, I do think I'm settling on D tier. And Luke said D. What do you think, Crow?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll take it. D
Pro
tier it is.
buys
Take it.
monk and deletes it.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep. All right.
Easy dub.
Who's up next? Is it
I
Luke?
think is it Crow now?
Yeah, I think it's me.
Okay, Crow.
All right. Let's do it. Come
Oh, it's
on,
close.
fighter.
Warlock.
Ooh.
All right. Here's the thing.
Patron enjoyer.
I like warlocks a lot. I'm gonna
Yeah.
say it.
I didn't
Warlock?
used to. I'll be honest. I didn't used to.
Warlock mechanically kind of dog shit. However, aesthetically, I would put it so far up in S tier. It goes in like S. Like I'd make a new tier and put Warlock up there because I've had entire campaigns have like their beats change because of the actions of a warlock and their patron. Like a warlock adds so much to your game's story and to its aesthetic and to what's going on with it. There is so much that I am willing to forgive its low power for that alone
Yeah,
and
Well,
would
and
and
I'll
comfortably
kind of
place it in
piggyback
S
on
tier.
that too, because the fact is, like, we talk about how how impactful clerics are with divine intervention and stuff, but because of just the nature of the relationship between the patron and the warlock,
It's
a
like they
tr-
make two
like a,
characters.
yeah, with the
I love
with
that
a
shit.
cleric, you can have them be ignored sometimes. There's always an excuse why you can kick it down the road, or there's always someone higher in the hierarchy. But like with the patron, it's just you and them.
it's you and your god, your demon, whatever. And I do feel like a lot of people kind of, especially with warlock dips, they skip that part of the role play because I mean, if you think about it, taking the warlock class should have a detrimental effect to your character. You are making a deal with a demon or a god or something. What is your trade? And
Yeah,
that
it
comes
comes
down
at
to
the
the role
cost
play.
of something you've built.
Exactly. So role play wise, if you dive into that, it that can be, I'm not saying you should build an entire campaign around a single character, but a warlock can literally be the concept of an entire campaign, how they
They
fulfill
do.
their pact.
They do exude main character energy.
They are very main character energy. So with warlocks, if you're playing with that concept in mind, I agree they are so far into S tier that it's incredible. But if you're playing with, I say the probably the typical player will not dive into that. It kind of falls on the DM to
They're
make that a
very
thing.
weak.
Yeah, and well, and the part of it. So warlocks, I do think warlocks have a good bit of power, but it is vastly limited because of how underutilized short rests are.
Mm.
I do
If
think it's interesting too that they just have a system that's kind of unique to them,
yeah,
and
it's and it
mechanically it wasn't broken. Like you'd think WotC broke it, but it seems to work well enough.
it does, and I
It's
think that
cantrip plus.
yeah, I mean, if you want to play a warlock who's got a lot of spells, basically they're a wizard who got their magic because of a patron, Pact of the Tome. You want to play a fighter who was given powers to make them more powerful so they can avenge their family by their patron, Pact of the Blade, or Hexblade or whatever. There's so many ways that you can twist warlock to fit any reasoning. They do typically
Mm.
have a pretty established aesthetic, but even that can be changed.
Yeah,
I
even with like Fey and
can't
different patrons.
I can't reimagine many characters. Well, I guess here's the thing. I can imagine a lot of character concepts as warlocks. I can't imagine a lot of warlocks as other classes
I agree with
because
that.
the warlock has just such a strong it is such a strong idea, like a core idea that you're like a sugar baby for a cosmic being, like and
I'd
that
put it in the S
yeah.
or A because of that too. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah,
inseparable.
I think it goes in A tier because as fun as it can
Hey,
be.
come
Well,
on.
no, here's my reasoning. I think it's an S tier for the fun, an S tier for the role play. I think it is a B tier for the general mechanics. But again, that is mostly because of how people run short rests. If you're doing short rests
Mhm.
more, they get more powerful. So I'd be okay with putting Warlock in S tier. I think they do fall into A through the average of roleplay fun mechanics. But if you run the game with enough short rests and you play your Warlock smart, I'd be comfortable with S tier.
Also, DMs out there, take advice from Baldur's Gate. Uh, roll half of the shit that are invocations for Blade into base Blade because it's so stupid that you have to take so many fucking
You have to do two
invocations in order
things.
to make that class work, that archetype work.
Yeah, well, yeah, you need to go Hexblade and Pact of the Blade and then
It's dumb.
invocations and all that. It should just be rolled into one. So I'm going to put it in S tier from your guys' input. I think it does belong there if it's run correctly.
I want to bring back all the 3.5 like glaive locks and different types of
The
like
different
Eldritch
builds.
Blast adjustments. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like how you could sculpt them.
Yeah. Because it really should Eldritch Blast should just be core, and then like subclasses
It should be a
it
feature.
should be like Turn Undead, yeah. Turn Undead
Also,
rather.
I was surprised that there was no like life tap-esque mechanic where you could make like a sacrifice or you could sacrifice your own like hit die for spell slots. I'd love a
I
mechanic
would
like
love
that.
that.
And it'd be cool to where if you do it, but it
Bloodhunter.
brings you to 0, it kills you. That'd be fucking great. You know, I love that idea to
Well,
where
and
it's like,
so what I like to run is the fact that like any caster that has spell slots can
mm,
overcast, but it does have a detrimental effect. Typically, I say if you want to cast a spell that you don't have a slot for anymore, the
mm,
level of the slot is the number of exhaustion points you take because it should be like a
Mm.
massive downside. You are overexerting yourself to make it happen. And with warlocks, I feel like that could be a cool mechanic just to have inbuilt and then have it be at a higher level. You can then do this once per day without getting the exhaustion or something up to it.
that'd be cool.
Like that seems like a cool
I've
mechanic.
I've
That
offered
does make
something similar for a boon in almost every campaign I've had with a warlock, either through an epic boon or a magic item. I always come across it with a different angle because I've been trying to find a way to make it work. The one I've landed on for the longest time is either an epic boon or a magic ring that I made uh, consume hit die in accordance to how many, like what level spell slot you're trying to get back. I think because of that, and because of the way the Warlock hit die scales the way it does, that it kind of automatically corrects for itself when it
Yeah.
comes to uses. The only thing is there are a bit of bumps in the road when you're about to reach those transitions to the next spell level. Other than that, though, I think it's been pretty fine so far.
I will also say there need to be more mechanics based on hit dice. It is
Yeah,
like I get that they're meant for healing, but it is a resource based on your constitution, not your stat, but your character's like your literal
yeah,
like
they're
healing
fortitude.
and life energy, your fortitude. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. There should be more things, and I love putting items in that gain, like the item can gain a charge for an ability by sacrificing a hit die, because I feel like that should be a mechanic that's built into more things, and maybe warlocks or sorcerers need something like that.
that would be great to see.
All right, spinning the wheel for loot. Druid.
Let's go.
Druid's one of those where it's like almost kind of like a silent S tier in the sense of like in terms of strength, mechanics wise. They
Wild
really
shape
do
is so
everything
strong.
well. Wild shape is very broken, and just the fact that like I think I almost want to say they're the best summons class too, which is as we established is pretty busted just as
I mean,
a thing.
it's literally fucking level 2 polymorph slash improved find familiar. Like that wild
Yeah.
shape has so much to it.
But no one's ever too compelled to play it for some reason. I noticed, like, similar to the cleric, it has this weird like reluctance roll because it is
It's
pegged
the
as the
least played class,
caster.
no?
Yeah, I think it is the least played class.
I think Druid is something that, like roleplay wise, too, can be really heavily dove into, and people just don't do it. You know,
I
you're
love
how?
druid
Why are you a
villains
Druid?
too.
Where do you come from? What or do you have your magic because of a vow, a pseudo pact to a nature god? Do you have your magic because of a, I don't know, some fey creature in the wilds that you met while you were dying or something? Like there's so much you can dive into why a druid is a druid, and nobody does it. So I feel like roleplay wise they can be and should be an S tier, but it's
Hmm.
not seen as much.
I think one of the more annoying things is wild shape because once you get it working, it's really strong, like you were saying. The
Right.
problem is as it stands and how it functions in the game, because let's take it out of the context of something like Baldur's Gate. I'm gonna be real, for all you Druid players who really like playing it in Baldur's Gate, I hope you get really fucking familiar with the monster manual. Because unfortunately, unlike what they do in that game where they present you all of the options, you know, you find a beast shape in the actual game, it is really fucking annoying. You have to have seen the beast, you have to know that it's a fucking beast. It has to fit into that specific CR for what level you're in. It caps out at first level if you're not a Moon Druid, eighth. Not first level. Caps at CR1 at eighth level, and then it doesn't get much higher unless you're a Moon Druid. And also, yeah, it's really annoying to have to do all of that work and then keeping track of all the statistics and all those things. and it feels kind of weird because it's like you're intruding on the space of the DM by going into the monster manual to find all this stuff. So yeah, it's not something a lot of people want to do because of that. I I will say there was something that they were doing in the playtest material that I feel like could have alleviated this, where they had like it was like what beasts of the land, beasts of the sky, beasts of the sea. Did you see?
Yeah, it
Did
was
any of
like
you guys see
it
that?
It's
was
like
a
the three
list,
buckets
right?
of aquatic
Yeah.
form, yeah, land form, air form, basically.
So I don't think it was entirely bad in concept. In execution, I thought it was fucking awful. But something that I liked as a concept is like, hey, if you have a template, why don't you have it so druids can get a number of like essentially traits that they could slap onto that creature, like claws or breath
Yeah.
weapon or things like why didn't they do something like that? There are other games with transformation mechanics that don't have full beast like monster manuals and shit that do templates like this. I
Yeah.
struggle
And
to
then
understand why
obviously
they did it the way they did.
the one you pick too, it's like, all right, it has flight. What else does it have at a certain level if it's the air one? Yeah, it
Yeah.
should really be that simple.
I
It's like,
have
okay, I'm a druid at this level. I can pick 3 traits. I turn into a beast of the sky. Beast of the sky can pick from this list of traits. I slap it together. I call it a falcon. Bam.
Yeah,
There
you
you go.
flavor it how you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In one of my games, there's a druid player, and he every time I mention an animal, even just like uh someone's on watch, you know, like if he's on watch, the druid's on watch, and I'm like, and roll for the encounter for the night, nothing crazy happens. You see a squirrel climb down a tree and it startles you for a second. That's it. And he just gets giddy, clicks his pen and writes squirrel in his notebook. Like because he's constantly on the lookout for everything. There was an encounter where they were sailing on a ferry across a large bay, and they were attacked by a like a possessed shark kind of thing, and he just clicks his pen and goes shark, because when he gets to the point where he can become an aquatic creature, that's something. And you're right, it's an annoying mechanic, but it's also when someone does embrace it, it's kind of fun to see by the end of the game their massive list of animals that they can become. But
I
I
think it also
do,
helps to have more types of animals that normally don't exist in the game to get them excited about those transformations. Because
yeah.
I like making little critters that have weird things going on with them, but I know that's not something every DM's going to do,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
I
kind of
love
sad.
home brewing. Like there was a, I recently in this same game, the last session, they were attacked by what I just call them burrow vipers. They're literally like poisonous snakes in a mountainous region that have a burrowing tooth, and so they just go underground to stalk and ambush instead of being above ground. And he just clicks his pen, burrow viper, because now that's a new thing, and he can become a beast that has a burrow speed that he's seen. So, like if you put more of those customized creatures in, it can be really, really cool. But again, that falls on the DM, not the base mechanics.
So where would we put Druid then? Since we both kind of hinted S at first.
I do think it is a strong class. I agree that Wild Shape is kind of annoying to have to utilize, but when utilized, it can be insanely powerful. I think I like it in S, but I do want to kind of bump it down to A just because I feel like, you know, it doesn't get played as much mechanics wise. It's great, but does have some limitations in like things you can wear, things you can do. And the limitations are fine, but it doesn't make it the powerhouse of like Cleric.
I can kind of agree with that too. And also kind of what we were saying with bookkeeping being a problem with Druid in general. Summons are the same thing. It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they get things like conjure woodland beings, which can summon like 16 different things at once.
I
I
just
forget,
call
I
that
forget
the
exactly what it
fuck
was.
you DM ability.
Yeah, at that point it's like
Fuck
fuck
your
you
action
player.
economy.
They all move on one turn. You know, like I
Yeah.
just yeah.
You are running a swarm, player.
Yeah.
You handle that.
All right, what do we got next?
That is
Yeah.
me
Would you
next.
put it A tier?
Yeah, we put it A tier. You good with that?
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say like high B, low A.
Okay.
Oh, this is the one with the monk
Fighter.
subclass.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah,
I didn't do the thing. Fuck.
this fighter. I really hope it gets some kind of martial arts attack.
Give me fighter again. Give me fighter again. I need to click remove. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Winnable, scripted.
Paid actors once again. Woo! I can't believe fighter
Custom
won
hard
twice.
build.
Yeah. All right.
That's serious.
It's me, right?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Uh, I mean, fighter's solid. It's the run of the mill. Everyone's like, "Why are you playing this cookie cutter class?" It's because it can do anything. Like, you don't have to play a fighter that just swings a sword and holds a shield. You can do so much more with it, but it also gives you the ability to just fucking. I came here to hit shit. I'm gonna hit shit.
Yeah, similar to a fight, similar to the wizard, it is core. I think the thing is though, fighter kept getting more things to make it more, easier and easier to flavor the different versions, while wizard just kind of stayed one note, kind of like what we were talking about, kind of like
Yeah,
how we were talking beforehand.
and we're not considering multi-classing here, but also I do want to address the fact that fighter is you can run all the way through, but it also does feel like it's built to multi-class. My phone just went off. What the hell? But anyway,
It does a few good things very early on. Yeah, it is
yeah,
differently for sure.
it's great. Yeah, you can multi-class into it. You can multi-class out of it very easily. I think it is. I mean, I don't know how far we want to go on it. I kind of want to say S tier just because of how much it can do, but I do know that there are some things about it where, oh, it's the bland. I just hit stuff. I'm not that great out of combat, but you can build it to be good out of combat.
Is it better than barbarian in terms of like martial?
I don't know. I mean, it is the martial class, like the core martial class. I feel like barbarian is a fighter with more flavor and more subclass like option. But even still, they've now added things like lost my voice for a sec. Eldritch Knight, Eldritch Knight. They've added a lot to make the fighter have more flavor potential and be able to do more.
I would say the S tier thing, it was a meme. Fighters are great. I love fighters. I stand for playing a human fighter. You're not basic, you're based actually.
Yep.
You
Yes.
can be a lot of things as a human fighter. You could be as wacky or as vanilla as you want, with just that set of choices. There are a lot of things that you could be, even if you're just just the most common combination. Like there are so many heroes in media and fantasy that are human fighters, so it's completely fine. It's a valid choice. You can also be other kinds of fighters. That's fine too. But because of that, fighters are pretty much a really good baseline. My issue with fighters, however, is I wish Battlemaster and their maneuvers or something akin to that was rolled into the main class. I would like it to be the class that is easy to get into, but also has a higher skill ceiling, to where there
Yeah.
are things you could be able to do with it once you get more comfortable with it. I would like it to have that kind of level of advancement. I felt like um, it can get there with magic items, but that once again requires your DM to do things like
Mhm.
that. Otherwise, yeah, like
Or an
I
artificer,
really,
giving your fighter a repeating shot,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
they're a great mold for other classes to be able to give things. They're the guy you want to buff all the time.
Yeah. A
Unfortunately
buffed
though,
fighter is unstoppable. An unbuffed fighter
yeah,
is a town guard.
yeah, exactly. This is why you're in a
I'm with
party with
you.
other wacky people, so they can give you the wacky powers, so that you can turn into uh an unstoppable powerhouse that has two actions. Um, but the thing is, yeah, I really do wish that they had a little bit more of their own when it came to, like, when it comes to like things like martial abilities and things like that. Yeah, that's the only thing I would wish for. Because of that, I would put them in like mid A.
I
I
think
think
A is
that's kind
good.
of fair.
Yeah, Sty Warrior was a lot of fun to play as Maseo in my campaign with Crispy's Tavern, and also I've played as a Rune Knight before, which is kind of busted. But yeah, the unfortunate thing is I do wish they had some kind of central resource between all these different subclasses that they could be able to pull from, like a kind of maneuver
Yeah,
thing,
I do
to be
agree.
able
They
to make it a
feel
bit more
they're
balanced.
very front heavy too. Like you
Yeah.
said, they get a lot at the start and they don't get as much going later into it.
Mm.
Just I hit more. but that
Yeah.
is still a really good mechanic to have if you have items and things that buff you. I mean, if you get an item that adds 2 damage to every hit, like in Baldur's Gate, that ring, whatever it's called, that gives you the +2 acid damage to every weapon attack. It's like that goes on your fucking fighter. That is
yeah.
insane, because 2 damage per hit doesn't sound like a lot, but then you have someone who takes 3 attacks per action and then has a
You wear
bonus
those Hell
action,
Dust
and then
gloves,
you
right?
haste them. Yeah, the Dark Justiciar ones too, 1d4 necrotic. Like, if you give them things that add a little bit, because they hit so much. So I think A tier is good.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Crow? No, Loot. Who are we on? I lose track.
Oh, I think it was me. Yeah.
Rogue or Paladin? What's it gonna be?
Okay.
Paladin.
All monitor.
Okay. Now, I was saying there were things I wish the fighter had. The paladin has all those things.
Paladin is
And that's
just
why it goes
Paladin.
S tier.
Yeah, Paladin is insane, especially with some of the things that they get, like some of their oath abilities, vow of enmity. Like, they get busted.
They're so strong. If any, you've, I don't even have to fucking say it. You have a paladin in your party. Just admit it. You have whoever you are, whoever's watching. You have a paladin in your party,
Yep.
and you know what you're waiting for? You're waiting to give them haste, so that when they slap a boss, they smite them 4 times in a row and kill the DM's boss in like 1 turn, because they're insane. Smites are insane. Paladins are just absolutely fucking bonkers. They can heal, they can hurt, and they're tanky as shit. Like, they got it all. They got
it
a lot
all.
going for them.
They're
DMs
the
listening.
most played for Baldur's Gate, if I recall. Right?
I think they are.
And one of the
they're
most played classes
great.
in D&D as well.
DMs listening, if you have a paladin player, which, like we said, you do, do this. Give them an item that lets them reroll 1s on their smite dice. Mechanically, it doesn't make a big difference, but they will love you so much, because that is the paladin's biggest gripe, is rolling 3 dice and getting 2 1s and a 2. I gave my brother's playing a paladin in one game, and I gave him some prayer beads that he wraps around the hilt of a weapon, and it makes it to where when you smite with that weapon, you reroll 1s on your smite dice. In session 1, he turned 3, like, it was insane the number of dice that he turned into higher damage. And while, yes, that does feel like it can break certain things if it's higher, rerolling the damage dice isn't really mechanically that big of a deal, because they could have rolled it anyway. So it's just a great thing to give them. They'll love it.
No, that's definitely fair. I like doing that with like any damage type abilities too. Like if you have a Tempest Cleric, just giving them the ability to reroll 1s for like lightning damage, stuff like that. It's always just a good mechanic to give people.
There's a feat, I think it's Elemental Adept or something that gives you that, and it's like, that's a cool thing to have. But if you are a character that's focused on that, you shouldn't have to take a feat to do it.
Yeah, and that's why it's like a great like mid game loot.
Yeah, so I agree. I mean, I don't think Paladin can go anywhere but S tier. It is fighter plus.
Well, I mean, quite literally, we said it was a little bit of Barbarian, a little bit of Cleric. It's better than Fighter. All those are S tier, and then Cleric, or Fighter's A tier. So it just makes sense that end up there.
All right.
Another thing too, much like the Warlock, the Paladin brings in some of their own story when it comes to, when they show up. It's saying that there are vows that can be made with deities or with other like creatures and pledges and stuff like that can be made, that can be done to exchange for power. And I like the idea of having someone be able to break their oath and things like that. Like, it adds to a lot of the role play.
It's a mechanic that Warlock should have, if you ask me. It's by far.
Well, people already do it. I feel like it doesn't really need the rules, because it's already ingrained in the culture. If it wasn't ingrained in the culture, then I would say yes, that Warlocks need something similar.
That's fair.
Because right now just the DM playing the patron just naturally kind of establishes that.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
I think we're on to loot. We're gonna spin, see what you get. I know it's a wild.
Yeah, I wonder what's gonna be.
Rouge?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Rouge.
Love me a Rouge.
I think it's gonna be Rogue.
Oh my god,
Rogue.
it was Rogue.
Oh my
just
god,
barely.
oh my god.
So the thing about Rogue is it's it's pretty good. Like it is So there's like the original trifecta. There's like the caster, the cleric, and the fighter, basically like the divine,
Mhm.
the wizard, the warrior. But then very early on, they added like rogue, like this. Sometimes they're
The
called like
thief,
skill
if I recall.
monkeys, the
Yep,
thief,
thief was the
Yeah,
first.
the thief
basically
was
the
yeah.
jack of all trades. Yeah, the thief was the first version of it, and it's because it similar to kind of the ranger a little bit too. Like you need an expert that does things well, and thieves are very good at infiltrating things, so they're
Well, and I
kind of your
mean,
guide through the dungeon.
yeah, the dungeon is the biggest thing. I mean, ignore any homebrew potential if we're just going by the books with the adventures and such. Every
Mhm.
adventure has trapped chests. Every adventure has a dungeon corridor that you need to look for those pressure plates. Every dungeon has locked doors. Like it really is a. And now I will say in fifth edition, and I dislike this change in fifth edition where they made it to where anyone can be really good at lock picking and such, because it used to be that that was a thief thing only kind of thing. And I
Yeah,
do
if I
think everyone
recall, right?
should be able to do it, but I feel like the rogue should be more of the we absolutely need this in fifth edition.
Yeah, they get
Because
like advantage with it or something
yeah,
better.
but even still, their ability to do it. And I will
They
say
do
this
get
about
reliable
rogue.
talent though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is
That's fair.
I don't play like when I play rogues, I usually multi-class with them, but you don't have to. And if you don't multi-class with a rogue, you get insane abilities, reliable talent, stroke of luck. Like it is crazy. So I don't know where it goes
D,
necessarily.
obviously.
D, yep.
Yeah, yeah,
But no,
for sure, for sure.
I'm a rogue slut. I love rogues so much.
I feel like
I
it
mean, at
goes high
least
tier, low
a
S.
yeah, maybe low S. That's fair.
I think yeah, I think it's a solid S tier. I mean, do you need a rogue in fifth edition? No, you can get around things without it. But earlier editions, it was essential. And if you're running an official game or as a DM, if you're putting enough stuff in to make that rogue shine, it
Mm.
is great. And you don't have to play the pickpocket happy thief rogue. There's so many other things you can do with rogue.
Yeah,
Mm.
and let's just compare like all the thieves that came after it. Like really, like there's not too many. Like Bard gave it a shot, as like a hybrid that does kind of some of the thief
Right.
aspects. And we kind of established like the shortcomings of it. There's really not any other ones that did a true stab, and I think it's just a testament to like the aesthetic of like Rogue that Bard's a
The
My
fun
rogue has a
parents are
character.
dead
Doesn't
and
matter.
I'm a
Like people like
thieving
thieves more.
orphan.
Yeah.
That's something that's always been nice about the idea of playing as a rogue, because like when we talk about the original D&D classes, like yeah, like the cleric, the fighter, and the mage, right? The rogue introduced something that I don't think a lot of D&D parties had at the time, and now still continues that tradition of you're the guy who's more morally ambiguous. You're the guy who could be the edgelord. You're the guy who could be the protagonist in the early 2000s, late 90s like action movie. Like
Yeah.
you can be an asshole. You're the only one who's allowed to be an asshole,
But you don't. But you
and
also
that's
don't
nice.
have to be an asshole too.
Yeah,
We said every group has a paladin. I think every group also has a rogue, most likely.
yeah.
And there's also two types of paladin rogue players. If you have both, which you likely do, either the paladin has adopted the rogue, or they are mortal enemies and will be the death of each other. There is no in between. Those are the
And
only
both options
options.
are great.
And both options are great. In the game that I'm playing,
Yeah, one's
my
chaos,
shadows
the other's order.
yeah. In the game that I'm playing a Shadow Sorcerer Assassin, my buddy Peyton's playing a Paladin, and we actually are using a homebrew Paladin subclass, the Oath of the Criminal, which basically is like you're a Paladin sworn to a more chaotic deity, and you are like the muscle of a thieves guild. And so it was
Nice.
easier for him to adopt me, but goddamn, that dude has hardcore adopted me. Like it works
Oath of the
so well.
Bouncer.
Beautiful.
The Oath of the Bouncer. Yep.
So
All
yeah,
right.
if you want friends to enemies, get your rogue with a paladin. Friends
Or
to
enemies
enemies,
to
enemies
friends.
to lovers.
Yeah, enemies to lovers. Yep. There you go.
Yeah,
Does it break your oath if you hook up with a rogue? I mean, I think it depends on the oath.
I think it depends on the rogue too, because maybe they don't break
Yeah.
that much law. They break they break law sometimes.
Yeah, like
I'd
taxes
say this.
maybe.
Yeah, like
My-
taxes.
My favorite thing, taxes. My favorite dynamic with the rogue and paladin is starting out as absolutely not. We will not break into this place. This is against the law. Transitioning to I'm going to look this way. And whatever happens behind me happens.
The
See
greater
no
good's
evil.
happening behind you. It's
Yep.
okay.
Anyone here watch White Collar?
Oh no.
I
No.
fucking love White Collar, S tier show. It's the Catch Me If You Can movie.
I'm familiar with that one, yeah.
So it's based on that. Basically, I can't remember the original guy's name, but a convict who was told that he could work his sentence off, basically working with the FBI to catch criminals and con men and all that. And so White Collar is a whole show based off of that premise, and it is absolutely amazing. And it's totally, the main characters are Neil Caffrey and Peter Burke, and Neil is the rogue and Peter is the paladin. And they start off with Peter being like, absolutely not, we are not doing anything wrong. And he stays pretty true to that, but he slowly starts being like, okay, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear you tell me you're going to go break this law to get us the evidence we need, and you're going to meet me back here in 5 minutes. And it's great. It's an amazing dynamic.
Yeah, that's basically the dynamic you will have with playing
absolutely.
as a rogue to a paladin, or even if you have a cleric that is of that same kind of uptightness. Though I guess that varies depending on cleric domain. But definitely with the paladin, you're going to be running into into those kinds of issues the most, and I think that could lend to a lot of really fun roleplay.
Yeah. So what's kind of interesting looking at like the tier list in general, it looks like Cleric and Rogue are really the only two that weren't eventually surpassed by someone else doing their gimmick better, I guess.
That is true.
Yeah, because Barbarian, like we said, does a little bit more flavorful thing than the fighter does. And I guess Warlock almost in a way like, meets that caster itch, as well as Sorcerer just
so
a better job too.
How would we sort the tiers then, just as a quick little add-on? I think Paladin is top of S tier.
I would almost put Barbarian at the end, maybe.
At the end, okay.
Yeah.
Bro, you agree with that?
Yeah, because I want Warlock to be pretty high up there, but I do agree with Cleric being high S tier. Yeah. Paladin does overtake it though, just because, like, if we're comparing not just the raw like mechanical power, but also like what it could do for stories, is by having somebody who has those restrictions, by having literally an oath of restrictions that they have to adhere to. I think that makes it so players, like, I personally, as somebody who used to do improv, as somebody who used to be an actor, I like having restrictions like that of things I can't do, because then it makes me think outside the box of what I can do.
You have to be creative.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It encourages creativity, and that's what I really like about that. That's another reason why I like the rogue being up here. The only one that's an anomaly to this would be the barbarian, because all four of those classes do provide a lot of that. Though I guess the barbarian does too, with how rages kind of function.
It's more of a mechanical restriction as opposed to a roleplay restriction.
Yeah.
I do personally think Rogue is above Warlock, but I think they're pretty close, so I'm okay if you want to leave Warlock above Rogue.
I like it being up there, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a good order. I guess Alchemist I'd bump down personally. Well, if we're going to A tier now.
Like low A?
Yeah.
I put Druid below Artificer, if I'm being honest.
Probably as well, yeah. So like Sorcerer, Fighter, Alchemist, Druid.
Artificer, Druid. Yeah, I think that's good. Sorcerer is definitely top A. B, I think is good as it is, but I know that Crowe is over there twiddling his thumbs, keeping his gripes about Bard down.
In D, while you're at it.
Yeah. Actually, here, hang on.
Yeah, what are you adding? Bard tier?
Actually, to be fair, we did say we'd delete Monk, so that probably deserves to be there too.
There we go. Bard is in Crow hates.
I don't hate them. I liked Alfira. Here's the thing.
Alfira's great.
Alfira's great. I like her little songs. I also like that. I can't say it in case anybody hasn't played Dark Urge. Something bad happens to Alfira. She goes to the, yeah, she goes to the farm where all the other dogs go. All the other dogs you used to own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where your
when you were a kid
is.
Yeah, it's where she goes to that farm.
She's actually taking care of your hamster.
She's taking care of him. That's what she's doing. She's fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, it's your dog when you were kids there, the hamster, the goldfish you had when you were 7. They're all on that farm, and Alfira's there too.
All right, so do we want Bard below Bloodhunter then to appease Lord Crow?
No, I completely agree with that. Yeah, Bard does go above Blood Hunter. Blood Hunter
Yeah, I'd
is
probably go
Okay.
above
kind of
it.
mid.
How do we want to sort C tier? That's going to be a tough one.
I kind of want to put Monk in C and move Wizard as low B tier above Blood Hunter.
Really? You want to change the
Yeah.
actual
Yeah, we
ranking?
could bump it up maybe.
What do you think?
Actually,
I'm okay with Monk being C, and then Wizard. You were saying upper or lower A tier?
Actually,
just
you know
between
what?
Bard and Blood
Yeah.
Hunter, right?
I'd honestly say, yeah, move Monk back to where it belongs.
Where it belongs. Wow.
I
So,
had to
all
think
right.
about it.
Do we want to put Wizard between Bard and Blood Hunter then, you were saying?
I think Wizard. I mean, we love Wizard. We love Wizard. It's our.
Maybe it stays in C.
Yeah.
We got to be final. We can't be seen
Okay,
as flippant, you know?
Okay.
True,
We'll put
true.
Wizard can be higher, but
I think Monk is last just because we said we delete it.
yeah,
At least Ranger, the system's failed it. Monk's failed the system.
Yeah, with Ranger, you're right. It's not their fault. It really isn't. I try to make this point because I feel like the Ranger suck thing got hijacked by a bunch of people that don't seem to understand why. Like, it got hijacked by a bunch of people that don't seem to understand the mechanics of 5e's exploration system, which is incredibly bare bones, and don't seem to realize that, like, it could be a better class. Like, people could have more fun with it. And like I was saying before, like, there's a reason why the satisfaction surveys don't come back with the same results as the play surveys. The play surveys are saying this class is played incredibly high, like, incredibly often,
I
rather.
played that Elven
Yeah.
Ranger, man.
Exactly. But then satisfaction's low. Why does that happen? It happens because people are playing it because it's good, but not because it's fun.
Well, people know why
think-
the thief is helpful, why the rogue is helpful. People don't know why
Yeah.
the ranger is helpful.
When you were talking about that initially, it reminded me of this meme I saw, and it was a Steam review, and it was an obscene, like 1,000 or some hours in a game, and a review left at 200 hours or something, and the review was do not recommend, and they were like, horrible game, I hate this, but they played another 800 hours in it, and then the comment on it was, this is undoubtedly about Ark Survival Evolved. And that's how I feel about Ranger. It's like, I hate this, it sucks, but I'm gonna put another 800 hours into it.
Yeah, I feel like that's where a lot of D&D players are who are like play Ranger are at. It's like, yeah, this is really powerful. It is strong, it does a lot of damage, and it doesn't do what a Ranger should do. And it makes me feel weird. You know, it's like it makes me feel like I'm playing the wrong class. It's like I'm playing like a fighter with more spells and actions, but then I'm not doing the thing I came over here to do, though.
Right. All right. Well,
Like,
I like
yeah.
our tier list. Monk down here and delete and merge with fighter, I think is a good play.
Delete this.
Delete this. That's going to be the thumbnail. That's going to be our clickbait right there. It's going to be the tier list, and then Monk is just going to be in the delete tier.
Yeah, it's not clickbait if it's true, though.
That's true. All right. Well, I like our tier list. I think we've done well. We condensed it very well. We're at 2.5 hours. So I think now
Yeah,
we're
shortest episode yet.
Yeah, shortest episode yet. Roll for outro. Crow did the intro, so it's between me and Loot.
All right, let me get
Get
the
them
D20
dice ready,
out.
boys.
Got to roll it between my hands, except I have push to talk on, so I'm rolling it between my hand and my desk.
All right, I'm ready when you are.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, we didn't say high or low.
I'll decide. High.
Okay. I got a 9.
I got a 12.
All right.
Ooh.
Run the outro, Loot.
All right. Thank you guys for stopping by our first tier list from the Definitely Not a Mimic podcast. We're going to have more of our normal show with guests coming on soon, but if you guys enjoyed the tier list, make sure to leave your comments below, explain in detail why Monk should be deleted, and try to find another class to delete as well. We're just really trying to get down to the old 4 classes, you know?
Yeah. What are the new 4? That's what we're trying to find out.
I mean, that would just be S tier, but we need to delete one.
Ooh.
Who goes? You
decide
in the comments
You
section.
decide. Yeah,
you decide in the comments.
All right. Well, I've been Zil from the Twisted Pint Tavern.
And I've been Jacob Crowe from the Crow's Perch. Please send all your hate mail to the Crow's Perch Gmail. It should be on my about section of my channel, and tell me why you think monks shouldn't be deleted, and why the exploration system in D&D is actually good. I'm ready to drink your tears and read your cope. Please send it.
And I'm Loot from the Loot Goblin Marketplace, and due to this tier list, I'm gonna bandwagon. Canonically, I'm now a paladin.
Okay, yeah, I like it. Canonically, I'm a rogue, but that's because canonically I'm a changeling in my tavern. Just don't ask how.
If I start like giving myself the Jesse Jordak workout challenge, I'll be a barbarian. But in the meantime, I'll post money to his OnlyFans that he doesn't have. So I'm a warlock.
Yeah, I got to get that sugar
Your
daddy patron.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.